This is the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. The new way Wyoming wakes up. Cowboy State Daily Show on the Finally Friday edition, November 15th. We're all gonna cry when they blow up this dam. LaPrelle scheduled for breach this spring. The governor proposes nearly $700 million more to the state budget, mostly to cover wildfires. Vandalism by unruly high schoolers closes Cheyenne Frontier Days. A fight over prime hunting land in the Laramie Range is headed to federal court. 2,000 acres solar farm outside of Casper. Not many like it, except for the county commissioners. The Utah man who cashed $13,000 in bogus checks says it wasn't his idea. Find the dude in the Florida license plates. A firearms cache, including homemade explosives, found in a home in Cody. Cops won't talk about it. And the border war is on. DUI patrols will be out, so don't drink and drive as the Cowboys try to beat those sheep tonight. These stories and more on the Cowboys State Daily Morning Show with Jake. Wendy Coors News Now.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Friday, November 15th. I'm Wendy Coor, bringing you headlines from the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom, brought to you by the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. From 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., Monday through Friday, Cowboy State Daily's Jake Nichols takes you deeper into the stories that matter and keeps up with the news, weather, and sports in your part of Wyoming. Just tune in to CowboyStateDaily.com and join the conversation. Engineers say there's no choice but to breach the failing 115-year-old LaPrelle Dam near Douglas. But farmers who rely on the dam for irrigation and runoff control say that leaves them with no good options. Breaching the dam could leave downstream landowners wide open to catastrophic spring runoff, according to Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines.
There's a lot of people downstream from that rely on that for agricultural irrigation and other water uses. And of course, they're not particularly thrilled to see that dam go, because that puts them in a really tough position, not only for the fact that they could be losing their irrigation water for up to 5 years, but also because that dam is really important to controlling spring runoff and the floods that they can get from that.
The 130-foot high dam was built in 1909 and was originally intended to have a 50-year lifespan. Usually when there's a feud in politics, a long backstory is involved as to what started it all. Appearing on Cowboy State Daily's Morning Show with Jake on Thursday, Secretary of State Chuck Gray said his ongoing feud with Governor Mark Gordon isn't personal, but it's about policy. Cowboy State Daily's Leah Wolfson reports that the animosity stems from a bill that Gray proposed while in the Wyoming legislature that garnered one of Gordon's first vetoes while in office.
It all kind of stems back to a veto Gordon made of Gray's bill in 2019 that would have allowed the state to have money dedicated to funding an effort the state of Washington made to not open a coal export terminal that Wyoming was going to use. This would have been really critical for Wyoming to export its coal out of the country. Gordon did make some efforts addressing this, but people like Gray have said that those efforts were too little and too late.
Gray also sparred with Gordon earlier this year on tighter voter residency rules, and on Thursday, Gray criticized Gordon's negotiating skills, saying the governor lacks toughness and timing. A proposed 2,010-acre solar farm and battery storage facility on private ranch land has a green light from the Natrona County Planning Commission. E.G. Haystack Solar, LLC, a subsidiary of Infinity Global, plans to build a 199-megawatt utility-scale solar power generation system along with 100 megawatts of battery storage on site. Cowboy State Daily's Dale Killingbeck reports that at the commission meeting this week, 2 people spoke in favor of the plan, while several residents spoke against it.
People that are going to live around the proposed area are concerned about the view. And another big concern that residents had was fire. And there was also environmental concerns. The people that are proposing the project said it's going to be made basically basically a lot of it's going to be silica, basically sand. It sounds like glass is the majority of it.
A representative of Infinity Global said the solar farm, which will be located just south of U.S. Highway 2026, would produce a net benefit to the county of at least $40 million over the estimated 30-year life of the project. Governor Mark Gordon unveiled his $692 million proposed supplemental budget for the 2025 legislative session on Thursday, one of the most important topics the legislature will consider when it convenes in January. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that nearly one-third of the proposed supplemental budget is dedicated to rebuilding resources for fighting wildfires that were depleted this summer.
2024 was a terrible year for wildfires around Wyoming, a historic year. The second and third worst wildfires in state history occurred this year, and the state completely decimated its reserves when it comes to fighting wildfires, $56 million to be exact. Gordon wants to replenish that account and add more to it to help mitigate some of the damage that was caused to some of the land and infrastructure because of these wildfires.
Wyoming suffered one of its worst fire seasons in its history this summer, with wildfire devastating 850,000 acres across the state. The state's 2-year budget for fighting fires was exhausted in a matter of months. And now let's take a look at today's weather with Cowboy State Daily meteorologist Don Day.
It'll be another nice November day across the Cowboy State and the region. Not much going on today. Seasonably cool temperatures, partly cloudy skies for high school football, or maybe you're headed to the border war in Fort Collins this evening. The weather too there and back, not going to be a problem. Good weather for football. But we do have a change coming tonight and tomorrow. For you folks in the western counties of the state and the northern counties of the state, you're going to have a chance for developing rain and snow showers this evening and overnight and into the day on Saturday. This is part of a storm system that's splitting into two, but it's going to be enough of a system to make for some small accumulations in those western and northern areas, the western mountains and valleys in particular. The front will make the state a bit cooler and a bit brisk for the weekend, but nothing crazy cool. Most areas Saturday and Sunday will just be in the 40s. Then our attention focuses in on another developing storm over the central and southern Rockies early to mid next week, which will at the very least mean some colder temperatures and wind and maybe some snow for parts of the state as well. Something we'll keep an eye on.
You can get Don's full forecast on the Cowboy State Daily website. I'll be back in just 15 seconds with more news.
Open enrollment is here. Discover a range of low-cost plans from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming. Shop now to find the best option for you. Online, in town, in touch. We're right around the corner. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming. What's your plan?
A dispute over a U.S. Forest Service land exchange involving a remote parcel of land that some call a hunter's paradise in the Laramie Range Mountains was settled until it wasn't. The controversial Britannia land exchange got the final green light from the Forest Service last month, but Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines reports that some adjacent landowners and other interested parties filed a petition in the U.S. District Court for the District of Wyoming to stop the exchange.
The Forest Service wants to take, I think, roughly 1,200 acres and exchange it for 3 parcels that add up to 800 acres in a slightly different part of the Laramie Range. That on the surface doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but the land that's up to be exchanged over or handed over to a private landowner, a lot of people are saying that they really like that as a great, rugged, remote hunting area. So there has been some pushback.
The Forest Service claims the proposed exchange would increase public access on the parcels that the Forest Service would get, as well as access on adjoining federal land. A rash of vandalism at the Cheyenne Frontier Days grounds has caused an estimated $15,000 to $20,000 worth of damage and prompted the organization to close the area to the public. A group of what on surveillance video appear to be teenagers have targeted Frontier Park and Old West Town with spray paint, tagging them with vulgarities. That's what Frontier Days CEO Tom Hersig told Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson.
The CEO of Cheyenne Frontier Days told me he estimates it could be anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 worth of damage from this graffiti. And a lot of that is because while the graffiti hit all over, they spray painted bleachers, they spray painted cement underneath the grandstands at Frontier Park. They also spray painted the front of a lot of buildings in Old Frontier Town, which is a problem because you spray paint on that natural wood, it doesn't come out and you have to replace it to actually fix that stuff.
During the off-season, the Cheyenne Frontier Days facilities have been a favorite favorite for locals who stop by on bike rides or walking their dogs, despite no trespassing signs throughout the grounds. Until now, officials have been lax about enforcing that, but not anymore. Hersig said the abuse of a few people have ruined that for everyone. When Senate President Ogden Driscoll of Devil's Tower and State Representative John Baer of Gillette met on stage at the Wyoming Business Alliance's Governor Business Forum in Laramie on Thursday, it was a collision of outgoing and incoming visions about what Wyoming's state government should look like. Politics reporter Leo Wolfson attended the forum and reports that while Baer and Driscoll disagreed on many topics, they share a desire to do what they believe is right for Wyoming.
Driscoll is kind of the outgoing vision in some ways. He will be coming to the end of his term as Senate President here very shortly, while Baer is going to be the likely next chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, which is the perennial committee in the legislature tasked with creating the budget each year. The two had some differences of opinion about how Wyoming should be spending its money.
Governor Mark Gordon also unveiled his $692 million supplemental budget Thursday during the forum, which he promoted as being both fiscally conservative and serving the public's needs. It will be up to the legislature to decide how much of this budget it wants to approve. And a contentious U.S. Senate race with record spending and an onslaught of negative ads ended last week in Montana during the general election. But the attack ads against lame duck Senator Jon Tester have not stopped. Cowboy State Daily's David Madison reports that tracing where the ads are coming from has taken some work.
Kind of like the villain who won't die in a horror movie, negative campaign ads have returned to Montana airwaves. And when you try to find out who's paying for these ads, it turns into a wild goose chase with very few answers. It appears that this group, Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs, is registered in Delaware through a subsidiary of a Dutch multinational company, Wolters Kluwer. And that's where the trail really goes cold. There seems to be no way to reach them.
Whatever the cause, it's not clear when the ads will stop, something many Montanans really want to know. And that's today's news. For a deeper dive into the people and issues that affect Wyoming, check out The Roundup, conversations with the most interesting people in the Cowboy State. A new episode drops tomorrow when I have a conversation with retired Game and Fish Director and Brigadier General Brian Nesvik. You can find the link on our website, on our YouTube channel, and wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you'll find it in our free daily newsletter. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.
Wyoming is a big state. There are so many stories to tell, and here at Cowboy State Daily, we pride ourselves in bringing those stories to you every day. I'm Riley Strand, videographer and production assistant for Cowboy State Daily Video News. Every day, host Wendy Corr and I talk to the experienced journalists who are covering the topics, issues, and people that are important to Wyomingites. And in our daily newscast, we bring you their stories. Tune in to Cowboy State Daily Video News every morning, only on cowboystatedaily.com.
Yeah, let's get to it this morning. 6:13 on the Finally Friday Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. And the morning sunrise brought to us by Brenda Harrison. She doesn't say where she is, though. Brenda, where are you? She does say she needs beaming up. Brenda Harrison writes, "Beam me up, Scotty." And she also says, "I have no idea what caused this, but it was an amazing sunrise." Well, what causes that, Brenda, is ice crystals, basically. We'll talk to Don Day later and ask him more about the phenomena that you see here in the sunrise photo. Sun pillars or light pillars is what you're looking at. They form when sunlight or another bright light source reflects off the surface of millions of falling ice crystals. So that means it's cold. You only see this in winter. Pretty cool. Thank you, Brenda, for the photo. Here's Don Day's weather forecast. Gray Rocks Reservoir. Tammy Lynn Arndt. shared this photo with Don Day. Don Day's weather forecast today. Looking kind of a mixed bag, depends on where you are, but mostly pretty nice. Central Wyoming, gradual clearing skies today. You'll be becoming mostly sunny at Casper, Riverton, Shoshone. Well, the highs near 44 in Riverton. Casper, you'll be up there around 54. And, of course, we can't rule out some wind, some breezy conditions. Evanston, Green River, South Pass, you'll be breezy as well. Mostly sunny, though. Slight chance of snow down there in Evanston right around noon-ish. Otherwise, mostly sunny. Highs 44 in Evanston, upper 40s near 50 in Green River. Western Wyoming, Pinedale, Alpine, Big Piney, chance of snow in the afternoon, late afternoon, otherwise breezy. Highs in the low to mid 40s. Northwest Wyoming, Du Bois, Jackson, chance of snow probably after 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Gradually becoming sunny after that. Bighorn Basin, Thermopolis, Cody, Lovell, clearing skies, becoming sunny with highs in the low to mid 40s. North Central Wyoming, Buffalo, Sheridan, you're looking at sunny conditions, a little bit breezy today with highs in the low 50s. Gillette, Sundance, Upton, you'll get sunny today after a few clouds move out of the way this morning with highs in the low 50s. Eastern Plains, Torrington, Douglas, Casey, mostly sunny today with highs in the middle 50s. Southeast Wyoming, Cheyenne, Laramie, mostly sunny skies with highs in the low 50s. South Central Rawlins, breezy, around 52. You'll be 51 in Encampment with sunny skies. A little windy and sunny, though, in Wamsutter with highs in the upper 40s. That's your updated Don Day weather forecast statewide. Let's take a look at the weather map. Currently 22 degrees in Jackson, 31 in Cody. Thermopolis, you're 26 right now. Gillette, 34. Down in Laramie, it's 43. 30 in Rock Springs, 27 in Kemmer. And you look at the disturbances across the state, maybe a little clouds and perhaps a rain shower passing through Douglas and Wheatland right now. Laramie looks like you might get some cloudy conditions in the morning, and another band you see there working its way through Ethity, Shoshone. But otherwise, not a bad day. No statewide major weather effects. Am I sharing? Oh, I wasn't sharing the, there you go. There's the current road conditions. Wyo Roads is where you find it on the interweb. Wyo Roads right now. Yeah, really nothing. You got some sketchy, slippery spots just north of Pinedale, between Jackson and Pinedale, between Pinedale and Daniel, really. And a few slippery spots heading over Togety Pass. Otherwise, yeah, just mountain passes showing a little bit slippery conditions, but not too much to worry about this morning. Jack Tennant. Oh, that's nice of you. Jack, we had a special guest yesterday. The executive director of UW's Alumni Association and a one-time offensive tackle for the Wyoming Cowboys back in the day. Not that long ago. I think, if Mike Tyson can come back and box tonight, then Jack Tennant can come back and play football for the Cowboys maybe tonight. We definitely could use him. Big offensive lineman. Abby had Jack on yesterday in her Ask Abby segment, and it was awesome, Jack, to talk about Wyoming Cowboy football back then and today. And yeah, we'll have to have Tennant on again, a 2010 graduate of UW. He's now the ED of University of Wyoming Alumni Association. So we'll check out Jack again someday. But he and Abby just checked in this morning saying, hey, thanks for having us on yesterday. Our pleasure. What a great interview that was with Jack Tennant. We got to beat those sheep. Sally Ann Shermer will be on later talking about the border war and its importance. We'll also talk to, I think Jared Petrino will be joining us. He'll probably talk more about the border war. That's the topic of the day. And a rare college football game that happens on a Friday night, not Saturday. So get ready for that one. News related regarding the border war. On that highway, that stretch of highway is pretty dangerous, and it is historically been marked with a lot of tragedy. So be careful on that thing. If you're heading down from Wyoming to see the game down in Fort Collins, Highway 287, both Wyoming and Colorado law enforcement going to be out. Heavy presence before and after the game. So, yeah, if you're doing the tailgate thing, if you enjoying some beverages for the game, do it safely, do it smart, get a DD if that's the case. DUI patrol is going to be out heavy on Highway 287, sometimes nicknamed the Highway of Death. There's been a lot of tragedy on that highway. It is nothing to mess around with, even when you're sober. Let's take a look at this story from Justin George. Highway 287, border war. There's a photo of an incident, undated incident. But yeah, that Highway 287, there's been just terrible stuff that's happened there. Between both schools, Wyoming and CSU, both schools have seen their share of tragedy. February, 3 members of Wyoming's swimming and diving team died when the car they were in crashed about 10 miles south of the state border. 2 other members of the men's swimming and diving team, also in the car, were injured in that crash. In 2001, 8 cross-country runners from UW were killed. I remember that when they were riding in from Fort Collins, heading back to Laramie. They were struck head-on by a pickup driven by a drunken driver. 2023, all told last year, 144 people killed on Wyoming's highways, according to WYDOT. And that Highway 287 is a particularly dangerous stretch, not for any, technical aspects about it or, it has the usual weather. It's just a popular interstate route crossing between 2 states, getting to 2 states. So, yeah, be careful if you're heading to the border war tonight, either side. Be super careful. DUI patrol is going to be out heavy. Let's take a peek into the Zoom room and talk to our managing editor, Greg Johnson. I just automatically let whoever's in the Zoom room in at about 6:20. So if it's not you, one of these days, maybe I'll be surprised. Just assuming it's you. What are you going? What's happening? You still going for Mike Tyson tonight?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's the thing. Do you watch the border war? Do you watch Tyson?
Oh.
Or is the border war going to be like the Tyson fight? Are they going to be battling it out too? Yeah, I'm still going for Tyson, but I'll probably watch the border war. See how that falls out.
The border war at times over its long, long history has looked like a Mike Tyson boxing match. There's been some fighting. They've gone at it. These two teams do not like each other, the Rams and the Cowboys. It'll be interesting. Yeah, the Tyson fight, I guess you could start watching that because it's going to be over quick. Either way, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. It's quite the show. But I mean, hey, if you can do it for you pay millions of dollars to do it, man, who am I to tell them not to do it?
By the way, how is Cowboy State Daily set for insurance, health and life insurance? Because Sally Ann Shermer is probably about to have some kind of cardiac arrest when I talk to her today. She is.
Well, she's a columnist, so she's on her own for that.
Okay, Sally Ann, you're on your own. We're going to talk to Sally Ann at 8:30, and she's already jacked up. Like, if you took her blood pressure right now, it'd be through the roof. But I am going to.
Is she going to Fort Collins?
I don't think so, because from what I understand, her latest column, and everyone should read it who's interested, Sally Ann Shermer's latest column about why she hates the sheep so much, why she is heavily invested in this game, the border war. In the column, she seems to allude to the fact she has not been to Fort Collins since 1966. She can't bring herself to go that since she was there for a terrible upset. October 29th, 1966, the Cowboys heavily favored. Cowboys should have killed the Rams, and the Rams won using a dirty, dastardly, and probably illegal trick play. And Sally Ann has never forgot it. Neither have a lot of Cowboy fans. I found video of that 1966, Greg, and I'm going to play it for her. She's going to be on the phone, so I don't know if she'll be able to see it, but I'm going to play what happened on that play. It was a trick play by CSU. It was dastardly, underhanded.
Was it like Bill Belichick like?
I don't know.
Was it that dirty?
It was naughty. It was on the level of a Belichick. Yeah, it was. The quarterback threw a pass to, the wide receiver just took 2 steps back on the snap. So it was in essence a lateral.
Yeah, it was a lateral, yeah.
And he threw it, but he bounced it. He threw it intentionally on the ground. He said the coach said they had been working on this play in practice to get him to bounce a football just right. Can you imagine how difficult it is? A football's not like it's very difficult to judge where it's going to bounce. He intentionally threw the ball into the ground, 1 bounce pass. His receiver caught it on 1 bounce. It was perfect. But everybody quit playing. The receiver,
they thought it was incomplete pass.
The receiver even he let his shoulders drop. He's like, we could have had a pass. You blew it. Everybody stopped playing. This wide receiver then threw a pass downfield, touchdown that won the game for CSU. It was naughty. And I have it on video. Sally Ann won't go back to Fort Collins since that happened. I don't think she's been back. I grew up in Colorado, and I tell you, I'm probably not as much as her, but I'm not a big CSU fan either. Right. I mean, I went to CU, so yeah,
there's a rivalry there, and I grew up in a house that, of course, it was the old WAC at the time. And, And I grew up in a house that rooted for BYU. So we would go down and be reviled for being BYU fans when they'd play Air Force, or when we go up to Fort Collins and root for BYU when they play the Rams. So, we never liked CSU either.
Yeah.
In our house. So.
Well, they probably got a talk show on this morning down there in Fort Collins talking about how much they don't like playing Wyoming, but they can't live down that play. That play was dastardly. I have it on video. We're going to play it later. We'll also later this morning tell you why Yellowstone, the TV show, why you can see a Yellowstone truck. They use those Dodge dualies in the show. And a Yellowstone branded pickup truck is pulling a Yellowstone horse trailer in Idaho. And if you saw it when it happened, this happened obviously months ago when they were filming this segment. But if you watch closely, the new season, which just unveiled, you'll see a segment where the Yellowstone Cowboys, the ranch hands, are heading down to Texas for some reason. And the normal route would not take you through Idaho, probably, if you were doing that. But they needed this stretch of highway in Idaho through Craters of the Moon National Park. And so or is it a state park? I forget. But you'll see, if you watch closely, you'll see a shot. And those who know Idaho well and who know that highway well will say, "Hey, wait a minute, I know that road." We'll tell you why that happened a little bit later. Greg, you had a story. What was your story about? I forget now.
Some vandals have been hitting the Cheyenne Frontier Days grounds.
Oh yeah,
they've been graffiti last couple of weekends. A lot of damage out there, especially because they're painting everything, and they tagged up old West Town, old Frontier Town, really good, and that's expensive because that's just all the historic untreated wood on the outside, and you spray paint that. You can't just wash it off, or it's unpainted, so you can't paint over it. You got to just replace the damaged wood, and so they've because of becoming or another sanctioned event, public can't be here, can't be on the grounds.
Yeah,
and that's always been the rule, but they've always been real lax with it because people go out and they ride their bikes. They like to go there for because they're open spaces. They'll walk their dogs and stuff like that. And they've always said, yeah, that's no problem, fine. But now these vandals have ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, we're flipping through some of the photos of that. Yeah, you're right. Some of that stuff you can sandblast off if it's on concrete, if it's on the bleachers. But when it's on the wood and those old town buildings, that gets expensive. That's too bad. There was surveillance camera, so they did see kind of who it was, and they were able to ascertain these are like high school age teenagers.
Yeah, that's what they think, is that they're high school kids. But yeah, there is video of it. The police have it, so hopefully they identify who did it.
Yeah, I mean, today's teenagers, at the risk of sounding like, what was Wally Beaver's father's name? Cleaver Moore. Yeah, the risk of sounding like some OG father lamenting today's youths. Today's youths in Casper, really troublesome, and today's youths in Cheyenne following suit. They got nothing better to do than tag the Cheyenne Frontier Days up to $20,000 worth of damage. And the worst part is now you got to enforce the closures to the area that was useful to the public. This is why we can't have nice things, as they say.
Yeah. And it might not seem serious, but it's really serious because it can impact their ability to get insurance. It's really difficult anymore to get that type of event insurance. The CEO was telling me last time they put out for it, only one company bid on their insurance. And, if they decide, we don't want to insure you anymore, there's no more Cheyenne Frontier Days.
I didn't think about that aspect. And so much of what you see in today's world is driven by insurance, the ability to get it cheaper, the ability to get it all. This is why, 50 years ago, Cheyenne Frontier Days, the grounds would have been wide open. It would have had this nice homey feel. The way we're heading, it's going to have to look like a prison with razor wire and fencing because the insurance companies, in order to insure you, will insist you got to have the ability to keep people out off hours, off season. And it's just terrible. People.
Why? People are the worst.
People are the worst.
The world would be great except for all the people, Jake.
If it weren't for the people. Well, if it weren't for the people, no one would notice when we breached that Laprelle Dam. Could this thing be turned around? I don't think so. I think the
dam is shot.
Yeah.
I mean, if they built it, when they first built it, its useful lifespan was 50 years. Now it's 115 years old.
Oh, wow.
They patched it up so it's like that first car I bought. I bought an old 71 Plymouth Satellite. And I bought it with already 240,000 miles on it. Bought $1.
Wow.
And, it's the type of thing that as long as it runs, anything else that goes bad on it, you just you either let it go or you just patch the crap out of it.
Yeah.
And so that's what they've been doing with the LaPrelle Dam forever. And when they say breach the dam too, they've already brought the water down.
Yeah.
They brought the water level down. So it's not like we're going to breach the dam and flood out everybody. That's their plan to do that. But it's really important for all those farmers in the irrigation in that area. What happens to this dam? So it is a big deal.
And we're not talking about what happens in the actual event of the breaching, which I hope somebody gets on video. That would be so cool to see. And I know there's not a ton of water built up behind it. That's not how you can do this safely. They draw the water down, so there's not going to be a torrent of water coming at communities below the dam. But I still want the video. I want to see how they do it. Perhaps they'll use the explosive some dude was storing in his Cody apartment. We'll talk about that in a second. But I want to see them blow up the dam, like boom. And then, it's how do you live without the LaPrelle Dam, which dams LaPrelle Creek, which in some springs can run wild. And flooding's an issue, and that's why you have the dam to begin with. Built in 1909, but for the next 5 years until they replace that dam, things are going to get weird. And like you saying goodbye to your old first car, folks saying goodbye to the dam may shed tears. I know Connie Bowen said, when we see that dam blow up, we're all going to cry. That dam is personal for a lot of people. They love it.
Yeah, and who doesn't like just saying LaPrelle?
LaPrelle. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there the old shampoo by that name, right?
Yeah.
Like I would know about shampoo, right? I guess.
Amazing.
Yeah. Good stuff. We got we had that guy from Utah who was cashing those checks from that convenience store, from that gas station, went to several different branches of their bank, cashed $13,000 worth of checks, and then told them, well, that was my job. I was hired to go cash these checks. I didn't know they were bad. So we'll find out on that one. But that's for a small business. Someone taking $13,000 out in one day. They just went from branch to branch, and good for the bank noticing, hey, there's a lot of money being taken out of this account. We're going to flag this.
Yeah, and I think greed might have been the downfall of this whole scheme. Which, we're talking about a story from Claire McFarland, who is not going to be on today. So I want Greg to maybe answer for her, because my big question about this story, which we will dig into deeper later in the show, is about this Utah man who cashed 3 checks, all told up to 13 grand, all written on this gas station. The checks were either stolen or forged, but the man said someone else had him do it. Someone else told him, hey, will you cash these checks for me? Now, why you don't have a red flag go up and say, well, this is sketchy. And he must have been offered like a decent amount of money to do the job. He cashed one, went to another bank, cashed another, went to a third bank, and that's where he got in trouble, because he tried to go for the most money on that one, over $5,000. The bank manager had to come in. They had to get ID, and that kind of tripped the authorities to the fact that there was some cash checking thing going on. This man's sitting in jail, but he's claiming it was a dude driving around with Florida tags that hired him to do the job. He's got some decent reasoning why that may be true, and perhaps a surveillance camera can catch him being driven to these banks by this car. But I'd like to know where the money is. If he's cashing these checks, that was my question to Claire. She doesn't mention in the story, who's got the money? Did he turn it over to this dude in Florida, or was he when they caught him, was he walking around with $13,000 in cash in his pocket? Where's the money?
That information wasn't in the court paper, so that would be interesting, and it's it's weird. You're either part of it or, I mean, really naive. Just some guy on the street hires you. Let's go cash these checks in another state.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
so
the dude in question is, we're not talking about a CEO of a company here. He's just trying to get any kind of day work he can, I would think. And yeah, he had an offer too good to refuse, but look what happens. What else is in the news? Governor Gordon needs more money. He's asked for an additional $805 million, mostly because of the money the state had to spend on wildfires this past season. It's not unusual to go into the non-budget year. The budget's done every 2 years. There's a budget session. This one's a general session coming up, but every general session lately, the governor has said, well, we need some more money for the state of Wyoming, and that more money is $805 million. Sounds like a lot, but
no, it's $692 million.
Okay.
The agencies had requested 805. His supplemental budget that he's proposing is 692. It happens every other year. When they do the budget, or every year he does a supplemental budget. It's a usual thing. And if there's money available, he can ask for more for different things, or say, let's put this in savings or whatever. This time, about a third of that he wants to put toward wildfires, because we blew through 2 years worth of wildfire money in a few months this last summer with all of that. And I'll give you a preview, because I'm putting the story up. I'll put the story up this morning. I talked to people last night about it. On those wildfire fronts, the elk fire officially now is 100% contained. They have 100% contained it. Now, it hasn't been a huge danger for those people for a couple of weeks because of the weather and everything. But just seeing that 100%, that yes, it's contained, it's not going to get away, it's not a danger to you guys or anything. The mental impact of seeing that number 100% is pretty important for those folks up there. So that's that's a good story. And you think about it, it's been less than 2 months since that fire started, and it just seems like so long ago, but also just like so quick at the same time.
Time to go celebrate, have a beer at that bar in Story, is it? The Parkman bar?
Parkman
the
bar.
The bar in Parkman. Yeah, that's good news. 100% containment party. Let's have one of those. It only cost $56 million to beat that fire down, along with the other one. $56 million spent fighting fires this year, according to Gordon. You're right. $805 million was the ask by various state agencies, but Gordon whittled that down to $692. What else is going on?
Well, you talked about that thing in Cody. That happened yesterday morning. That was pretty early. News that Cody Police Department put out a report about they were at a house with other at a residence with other agencies investigating someone with illegal firearms and homemade explosive devices, and that's it. There's not much other information other than that they believe there's no threat to the community, and that they provide updates as the investigation progresses. Called, left several messages for the Cody police chief, emailed him some questions about it. Never heard back, and they didn't update their report either. So no other information was put out. So, one of the things is whether there's a suspect and whether someone's in custody. So really, we don't know if there's someone who's making bombs out there
Right.
around Cody, if they're still out there or not. But we're trying to find out.
Too many unanswered questions. I mean, I commend law enforcement when they put out press releases like this. That's good to inform the public. But then when they don't follow up, you just leave so many question marks about a story. And it's really frustrating, especially when you hear stories like, a house full of firearms cache, homemade explosives, and now you're wondering, are we in danger? And then they always give you that at no time was the public in danger. Meanwhile, they're saying don't go anywhere near that house, and no mention of anyone arrested or any resolution. Police Chief Jason Stafford, if you're watching the show, please let us know what's going on. We want to know if it's...
Well, it is an active investigation, and they have to do, I mean, that's their job. Their charge is to investigate this, not to accommodate me or other people asking questions about it. However, there is some just very basic level things like, is there a suspect, and is this person in custody or not? I mean, I think just something basic like that, just to let people know, just so people in the area know whether there's someone out there who's making this, if they're still out there or not. I mean, that's what we try to find out. And so, we report what we're able to get. But I mean, we're also respectful that they have to conduct their investigation, and we don't want to report it in a way that screws that up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're trying to think of what's information the public needs to have too. So
we'll stay on that story like Cowboy State Daily does. We'll make sure we have a resolution for that. And, if need be, we'll send Claire in there, because no one can refuse Claire when she goes after a story. She gets it, man. She'll find out. What about this solar farm in Casper? Is this thing, I didn't see too many people liked it, and there are, opposition whenever you make a solar farm is pollution, both the potential of something leaking into the ground and just eye pollution. Like these solar farms are glaring. If you look out, they glare the sun. There's also wildlife impacts people are worried about, although there are 3 wildlife corridors that will be instituted along with this project, this 2,000 acre project. And then, of course, fire hazard. You talk about lithium batteries storing the power generated from the sun. And those lithium batteries, we're all told, can blow up at any time, especially if you bring them on an airplane. So there's reasons to be worried. Is there enough benefit here? Some people asked. But it looks like this thing's going forward. County commissioners in Natrona say, 2,000 acre solar farm.
Well, the planning commission did.
Planning
commissioners
commission
still have to okay it. So the commissioners can say no. They can. That's what happened with the gravel pit. The commissioners have the final say on it. And really, when these things come up, whether it's a solar farm, whether it's a wind farm, gravel pit, whatever, you don't get a lot of people who turn out and say, "Yeah, I love it. let's go." Yeah. I mean, people don't usually
my favorite
go out
thing
of their way to say how much they like something. Right. They usually go out of their way to say. So it's not unusual that you get a lot of complaints.
Yeah.
This one is a little different. Well, not different, but this is private property. It's this person's ranch. It's their land. It's what they want to do with it. So there is kind of a private property rights type of thing too. There's always that, who are you to tell me what I can do with my land or not?
Yeah.
But there are some legitimate concerns from the neighbors, especially those who live a little higher up. They say, it's just going to be a big, giant, reflective, bright ball of light reflecting up at them on the mountain in their house. Yeah, I wouldn't want to live with that either. So who knows how it turns out? But there's more solar farms coming into Wyoming, and some of them are a lot bigger than that. There's that one in South Cheyenne that's like going to have 1.2 million solar panels.
Yeah, there really is no perfect way to generate energy or extract energy or feed us energy. We all need energy, all of us. Well, how much energy are we using doing this Zoom room, doing this show? We need energy. None of the ways to get it really are perfect. I mean, whether we're sucking oil out of the ground, whether we got the wind turbines everybody's got to look at, and then nowhere to put the blades when they're crapped out. And then solar farm, I mean, sun seems like a no-brainer. We got lots of sun in Wyoming, but you need those panels. And who wants to look at those? So, yeah, there's no easy way to do energy, I guess. Not yet.
I want a big, giant hamster farm somewhere.
Yeah.
Put those little balls generating energy.
Well,
get PETA after us for that.
Yeah, there'd be animal rights activists that would show up at that one saying it's not fair for the hamsters. I know. Anything else going on?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Always stuff going on. The prime hunting land exchange. Mark has that story.
Yeah,
it's interesting because they want to trade off, these little tiny enclaves, these little bits of land, and one of them is would take away access to what some say is a pretty prime little spot of hunting land in the Snowies. So that's worth watching.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Mark's been on that story from the beginning, and those land swaps that are often proposed by federal agencies are almost always contentious because people have personal ties to land, personal interests in land in it. How do you make a land swap even? If we get this many acres for that many acres, you're never comparing apples to apples, and it's difficult. This one's going to federal court. Mark Hines is on it for us. And Leo Wolfson has been trolling the morning show here in order to pull some stories out. He happened to catch an interview with Secretary of State Chuck Gray, who did divulge on the show yesterday that it's nothing personal with Governor Gordon. It's just it goes way back. This perceived feud between Gordon and Gray goes way back to when Chuck was in the legislature, and he had some pretty cool bills he thought he could get through, and the governor gave him the thumbs down on more than one.
Yeah, but yeah, there's nothing, we talked about it yesterday. There's nothing that says that you have to get along all the time.
No,
that's why you have different people. That's why it's not a monarchy. It's the different opinions of people that come together to shape what actually happens. So
makes for better informed decisions when you do have a little friction in the process. And that's also in another Leo Wolfson story. Legislative leaders debate tax relief, visions for a Wyoming future, talking about money, and there's some good quotes in there, including from Senate President Ogden Driscoll, who said the sky is not falling when it comes to Wyoming and its fiscal budget, its fiscal responsibility. He said Wyoming has more money per capita in savings than any other state in the nation. And I think one of those guys interviewed in Leo Wolfson's story talked about how it's good to have occasional disagreements. And everybody starts out here and you work your way to the middle. That's how decisions are made in Cheyenne, for sure.
Yeah. Driscoll, his quote was, he said that we can butt heads as long as they're not bloody.
Yes. Yes. Good point. Yep. And it did all that stuff, just works your way to middle ground, works your way to compromise, which is why we need Democrats on committees in Cheyenne, I think. But we'll see what Speaker of the House says. All right. Well, that's a lot of stuff. How's the weekend shaping up? Pretty good?
Yeah, like always, a lot of weekend stuff.
Okay.
Full slate of stories for the weekend.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, Greg. We got a ton of guests on today, this Friday, so it should be pretty exciting. What a week we've had on the show. Rob Wallace, former high-ranking Trump guy in Trump 1 administration. Secretary of State Chuck Gray, Abby brought on Jack Tennant yesterday. Did you see that? The University of Wyoming Alumni Association executive director and a former football player for the Cowboys.
I didn't.
Man.
When I'm done with you, Jake, I actually go to work.
Oh. Well.
No, it's I do catch stuff. I saw Chuck Gray on there yesterday. I thought, always really good stuff. And starting today, you got the state championship football.
Oh, right? Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. I didn't even think about that. High school football, state title games going on in Laramie. Good point.
I think they start today and then 3 and 4 air tomorrow.
Good point. I'm going to have to go, see who's playing who and let everybody know the preview for that. Everyone's leaving Laradice for the college football game, and those left behind are going to be all these high school moms and dads going to watch their kids play for state title championship games. That's tonight and tomorrow. Good point. All right.
Yep.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. I'll see you later, Jake.
All right. Greg Johnson, he's got to go back to work. We're doing nothing but working here in the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show. We'll take a quick break. Allow me to get the high school stuff ready, and then I'll run down the lineup for you for the rest of the 3 hours of the program. Coming right back on the Cowboys.
Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake continues.
Yeah, we're back. Here's what it's going to look like for the high school football championships, beginning with 4A. That's going to be Sheridan against Cheyenne East, the top-ranked Sheridan Broncs, of course, riding that historic record-setting winning streak. Going to try to add one more state title, add one more W to the legacy that is Sheridan. Sheridan Broncs against Cheyenne East. That game takes place tomorrow down there in War Memorial Stadium in Laramie. In 3A football, the championship will be played also tomorrow, I think. No, that game is tonight. Oh, wow. That's Star Valley against Cody. Top-ranked Star Valley against number 2 ranked Cody Broncs. That's going to be a good game. Those two teams played during the regular season. Cody blew a 3-touchdown lead to Star Valley in a game that had no defense at all. Just a ton of points. So that should be a fun game tonight. Also tonight, the 2A football championship. Top-ranked Bighorn takes on 4th-ranked Cokeville in what should be a fun football game. Tomorrow, 1A 6-man Little Snake River will take on Burlington. In 1A 9-man, it's number 1 ranked Lingle Fort Laramie against number 2 Pine Bluffs. That game is tomorrow in 1A 9-man. And I think that's everybody playing for state championships in Laramie tonight and tomorrow, all weekend long. High school football at the War. Meanwhile, the usual residents of War Memorial, the Wyoming Cowboys, will be traveling down to Fort Collins to take on CSU in the border war. We're all excited for that. We got our Andrew Rossi this hour. We'll talk to Aaron Turpin, our automotive guy, in this hour. Jared Petrino, Sally Ann Shermer will join us in the 8 o'clock hour to talk about the border war. And I think we'll get Wendy Core, our own Wendy Core, ask her about some Cowboy State Daily stuff. And Leo Wilson will drop in on the 9 o'clock hour. So lots to do on this Friday. Let's get to it. This is Wendy Core with Top of the Hour News.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Friday, November 15th. From the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom, I'm Wendy Core. Engineers say there's no choice but to breach the failing 115-year-old Laprelle Dam near Douglas. But farmers who rely on the dam for irrigation and runoff control say that leaves them with no good options. Breaching the dam could leave downstream landowners wide open to catastrophic spring runoff, according to Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines.
That puts them in a really tough position, not only for the fact that they could be losing their irrigation water for up to 5 years, but also because that dam is really important to controlling spring runoff and the floods that they can get from that.
The 130-foot-high dam was built in 1909 and was originally intended to have a 50-year lifespan. Well, usually when there's a feud in politics, a long backstory is involved as to what started it all. Appearing on Cowboy State Daily's Morning Show with Jake on Thursday, Secretary of State Chuck Gray said his ongoing feud with Governor Mark Gordon isn't personal, but about policy. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that the animosity stems from a bill that Gray proposed while in the Wyoming legislature that garnered one of Gordon's first vetoes while in office.
It all kind of stems back to a veto Gordon made of Gray's bill in 2019 that would have allowed the state to have money dedicated to funding an effort the state of Washington made to not open a coal export terminal that Wyoming was going to use. Gordon did make some efforts addressing this, but people like Gray have said that those efforts were too little and too late.
Gray also sparred with Gordon earlier this year on tighter voter residency rules, and on Thursday, Gray criticized Gordon's negotiating skills, saying the governor lacks a proposed 2,010-acre solar farm and battery storage facility on private ranch land has a green light from the Natrona County Planning Commission. Cowboy State Daily's Dale Killingbeck reports that E.G. Haystack Solar, LLC, a subsidiary of Infinity Global, plans to build a 199-megawatt utility-scale solar power generation system along with 100 megawatts of battery storage on site.
People that are going to live around the proposed area are concerned about the view. And another big concern that residents had was fire. And there was also environmental concerns. The people that are proposing the project said it's going to be made basically, a lot of it's going to be silica, basically sand. It sounds like glass is the majority of it.
A representative of Infinity Global said the solar farm, which will be located just south of U.S. Highway 2026, would produce a net benefit to the county of at least $40 million over the estimated 30-year life of the project. I'll be back with more news right after this.
Did you know it's illegal to dig or excavate without knowing what's below? This is Jan Warren, Executive Director for One Call of Wyoming. We will be hosting workshops around the state to educate homeowners, realtors, landscapers, underground facility owners, and excavators on the state law, industry best practices when it comes to planting a tree, building a fence, or any other excavation project you have planned. Join us for a free breakfast, get your questions answered, and learn how One Call of Wyoming is here to help. Go to onecallofwyoming.com and register today.
Governor Mark Gordon unveiled his $692 million proposed supplemental budget for the 2025 legislative session on Thursday, one of the most important topics the legislature will consider when it convenes in January. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that nearly one-third of the proposed supplemental budget is dedicated to rebuilding resources for fighting wildfires that were depleted this summer.
2024 was a terrible year for wildfires around Wyoming. Gordon wants to replenish that account and add more to it to help mitigate some of the damage that was caused to some of the land and infrastructure because of these wildfires.
Wyoming suffered one of its worst fire seasons in its history this summer, with wildfires devastating 850,000 acres across the state. The state's 2-year budget for fighting fires was exhausted in a matter of months. And a contentious U.S. Senate race with record spending and an onslaught of negative ads ended last week in Montana during the general election, but the attack ads against lame duck Senator Jon Tester have not stopped. Cowboy State Daily's David Madison reports that tracing where the ads are coming from has taken some work.
When you try to find out who's paying for these ads, it turns into a wild goose chase with very few answers. It appears that this group is registered in Delaware through a subsidiary of a Dutch multinational company. And that's where the trail really goes cold.
Whatever the cause, it's not clear when the ads will stop, something many Montanans really want to know. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the daily newsletter button on cowboystatedaily.com. I'm Wendy Core for Cowboy State Daily.
Back to the studio, 7:05 on this finally Friday, Cowboy State Daily morning show with Jake. Don Day informs me with late notice that he will not be on the show this morning. He's in Milwaukee. A likely excuse, Don. That's okay. We were going to ask Don about that phenomena that you can see in the sunrise photo that we showed you earlier. Let me pop it in again for you. This is the sunrise of the day photo. I think this is it. Where is it? Now I can't find out what I did with it. Here we go. Sunrise of the day. Fantastic photo from Brenda Harrison. Looks like this here. And that's a phenomenon known as solar pillars or light pillars or sun pillars. And it's created by ice crystals, millions of tiny ice crystals falling from the sky, and they reflect light sources, whether it's the sun, the sunrise, or sometimes you see it at night. You'll see a parking lot, the Walmart parking lot lights will have these pillars. Any strong light source will reflect off these ice crystals, millions of them, and that's what you get. You get these solar sun pillars, light pillars. So, yeah, that was going to be our weather question posed to Don Day. We always like to see if we can trip him up with some oddball weather question. Yesterday, we asked him if we could experience perhaps another Dust Bowl. Remember the Dust Bowl era from the early 30s? I don't remember it, but some do. And would any old timers still be alive today? I guess you could be. You could be, as a kid, you could have memories of the Dust Bowl years in the early 30s, and you could be, approaching 100 years old today. I'm sure Cowboy State Daily's Bill Sniffen remembers the Dust Bowl era. Remembers putting on his cattle cake scarf over his mouth. It's like Dust Bowl era of the 1930s, early 30s was like riding drag at the ranch. You just got to put on your neckerchief and hunker down, keep your head down. The Laprelle Dam, it's just fun saying Laprelle. Yeah, that's what Greg says. Mark Hines has this story about the failing Laprelle Dam. Now, we told you weeks ago about this dam and the fact that it would need to be replaced. It's 115 years old. This dam was built, well, do the math, 115 years old. And today is 1909, the 130-foot dam built in 1909, originally intended to be useful for about 50 years. After that, the water would start winning the battle against the dam. And look at, we're more than double the life expectancy of this dam. A crack was noticed not long ago. It's not the first time the dam has showed signs that it was creaking, losing its fight to hold the water back, and it's been patched up a few times, but this time it's just too much. And A few weeks ago, Mark Hines had the story that the Laprelle Dam was going to be decommissioned this spring. It's scheduled to be breached April 1st of 2025. But here is this story's in the news again because of kind of the fallout. Well, we had the government version of what was wrong with the dam and what they were going to do about it, but there was a recent meeting of the people, and some folks say that this seems real fast. They didn't hear news of this. Members of the Wyoming Legislature's Select Water Committee met yesterday, and several people spoke, including Leonard Chamberlain, who spoke yesterday to this committee. And Leonard said, I've seen what that creek, meaning Laprelle Creek, can do in springtime. And if this dam is breached, you have taken away every bit of protection for the people who have had protection for 115 years. And that was longtime farmer, rancher in the Douglas area, Leonard Chamberlain, speaking before the Wyoming legislature's Select Water Committee yesterday. Connie Bowen also spoke to the committee, and she said, if we see that dam blown up, we're all going to cry because it's been part of our lives. It's not just a chunk of concrete. It has personality. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but it's real. She's a landowner and an irrigation rights stakeholder in the matter. That's Connie Bowen who made comment about this dam. Let me share the photo with you. That's the Laprelle Dam. And it is coming down. Engineers say there's no choice. This dam is failing. I believe there are plans to rebuild, but that will take 5 years before a new dam is in place. Mark Hines talks to Wendy Core about the deal.
Engineers say there's no choice but to breach the failing 115-year-old Laprelle Dam near Douglas. But farmers who rely on the dam for irrigation and runoff control say that leaves them with no good options. Breaching the dam could leave downstream landowners wide open to catastrophic spring runoff, according to Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines.
There's a lot of people downstream from that rely on that for agricultural irrigation and other water uses. And of course, they're not particularly thrilled to see that dam go because that puts them in a really tough position, not only for the fact that they could be losing their irrigation water for up to 5 years, but also because that dam is really important to controlling spring runoff and the floods that they can get from that.
The 130-foot high dam was built in 1909 and was originally intended to have a 50-year lifespan.
Yeah, and of course, in preparation for the breach, the scheduled purposeful breach on April 1st, in preparation, water will be drawn down. You notice they're doing it on April 1st, so presumably that would be when water is at its lowest naturally. You don't have yet the spring melt by April 1st, at least not in much of Wyoming. You just haven't had consistent temperatures warm enough to get that spring melt going. So a lot of the snow melt would not be causing water behind the dam to be rising. Water is also going to be drawn down and diverted to other areas. So it's not like you're going to bust that dam on April 1st and here she comes with the flooding. Although I'd be interested to know whether plans for breaching or any kind of plans, if they could be affected by a very severe winter and a very big anticipated spring melt and runoff. Let's say we go on to have a record-breaking winter in that area with a record-breaking snowpack. And I wonder if plans to breach the dam on April 1st, should that happen, be postponed or altered in any way in anticipation of that. We'll have to see. And then, of course, we'll need Don Day to do that weather forecasting for us. Don will tell us what kind of winter is in store for the Douglas area around the Laprelle Dam. That'll be my first question for him Monday. I'm going to write that down. Don, what's the weather forecast for the LaPrelle Dam over the winter? Leo Wolfson's story about the governor asking for more money. Now, this is not unusual. As you heard Greg Johnson say earlier in the show, that every 2 years, Wyoming does its budget. And it's called the budget session down there in Cheyenne. Alternating years, the annual meeting of lawmakers in Cheyenne is all budget concern. This year, it's a general session, so that means the budget was done last year. The budget is a biannual. It's done for a two-year plan. So in the off year down in Cheyenne, there's often an additional money added to the budget. I don't know if there's ever money subtracted. We all know how budgets go, right? Whether it's your family budget or a business, small business you own, or whether it's a corporation or a state or the federal budget. It only goes in one direction, up. They never go down. And so for as long as I can remember, every other year during a general session, the Wyoming governor at the time will release his supplemental budget, which is basically saying we need to add this to the budget. And this being $692,374,241. That's the request. Gordon was petitioned by various state agencies for $805 million total in additional monies. He was able to whittle away $113 million out of that, leaving the 692. So that would push the biennial budget to $10.8 billion if all is approved. And usually this goes fairly smoothly, although there may be some jockeying around when we get it down to Capital City, but we'll see. The state's 2-year budget for fighting fires was exhausted in a matter of months this year. That's the reason for this large ask, basically. $692 million. Of that, about, I think, an estimated 60%, did the governor say, was all for fires? Or nearly a third. Okay, nearly 1/3 of the proposed supplemental budget is due to wildfires and the money that was spent fighting wildfires this past season. Of course, there was the Elk Fire, basically more than just the 2 fires. There was other fires, if you'll recall, before the 2 big ones. But, you had about 805,000 acres burned in the state. And mostly between the big Elk Fire and then the Pack Trail Fire on Togety Pass. Those 2 fires cost, in addition to all the other fires in the state, cost $56 million to fight this year. And it completely depleted the state's emergency fire suppression account. So it needs to be replenished. Our own Leo Wolfson talks more on this.
Governor Mark Gordon unveiled his $692 million proposed supplemental budget for the 2025 legislative session on Thursday, one of the most important topics the legislature will consider when it convenes in January. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that nearly 1/3 of the proposed supplemental budget is dedicated to rebuilding resources for fighting wildfires that were depleted this summer.
2024 was a terrible year for wildfires around Wyoming, a historic year, the second and third worst wildfire wildfires in state history occurred this year, and the state completely decimated its reserves when it comes to fighting wildfires, $56 million to be exact. Gordon wants to replenish that account and add more to it to help mitigate some of the damage that was caused to some of the land and infrastructure because of these wildfires.
Wyoming suffered one of its worst fire seasons in its history this summer, with wildfire devastating 850,000 acres across the state. The state's 2-year budget for fighting fires was exhausted in a matter of months.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Leo. I think I said 805,000 acres, 850,000 acres that were devastated by wildfire this past summer across the state of Wyoming. And, you know, a ton of those, 100,000 at Elk Fire, just under 100,000, I think. And you heard Greg Johnson say that fire's finally officially 100% contained, Elk Fire, so that's good news. And then the Pack Trail Fire was very similar in size, some 90,000 something acres. So yeah, those two fires, that was expensive. Now, obviously, some of the bill for fighting fires is footed by the feds, but Wyoming's on the hook for some $56 million, and to replenish the wildland firefighting account, the governor has asked for a supplemental budget of some more $692 million. So we'll find out how that goes in the coming months when the 68th legislature meets in Cheyenne. Meanwhile, also in Cheyenne, vandalism. This is a disappointing story. Sometimes I don't have a lot of faith in the next generation, and when it comes to stabbing and shooting each other in Casper or a can of spray paint in Cheyenne, I offer as evidence A and B and C these incidents. A rash of vandalism at Cheyenne Frontier Days means the grounds are going to have to be closed. Now, they're closed to the public when the rodeo is not going on. But Cheyenne Frontier Days, the 10-day rodeo, obviously that the grounds are heavily utilized during that time in August, that 10-day, that 2-week period. But in times like right now or over the winter, there's not a lot going on at CFD. So, folks have kind of used the grounds for various purposes, although they really shouldn't be on it. That would be technically trespassing. But CFD officials have been kind of lax on kicking people out. They understand that it's a useful piece of property for area residents in Cheyenne, but that's no more. Now they're going to have to patrol that and make sure people stay out of the property on Cheyenne Frontier Days because of this. Idiots who have to tag and spray paint and do their graffiti. I don't get, this is not, by the way, what I would call graffiti. This is just morons. I mean, we had a story not long ago about a graffiti artist who likes to tag things. And, sometimes you got artists like Banksy, if you're familiar with him, who's, world renowned for his public art, which basically began as graffiti. There's maybe you could make an argument for some graffiti to have some kind of value to it visually. But for the most part, when you're doing graffiti, you're trespassing. You're defacing property that's not yours. And in this case, this is not graffiti. This is just morons. Just ruining property and doing it with vulgar slogans and just, it's not necessary. You can see here as we share the photos, the damage done to CFD, and they're going to have to fix all this stuff. and estimates $15,000, maybe $20,000 to repair and get rid of all this spray painting. Just stupid. Surveillance cameras were able to pick up footage of those that did it. Our own Greg Johnson has more on the story. This is him here.
A rash of vandalism at the Cheyenne Frontier Days grounds has caused an estimated $15,000 to $20,000 worth of damage and prompted the organization to close the area to the public. A group of what on surveillance video appear to be teenagers have targeted Frontier Park and Old West Town with spray paint, tagging them with vulgarities. That's what Frontier Days CEO Tom Hersig told Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson.
The CEO of Cheyenne Frontier Days told me he estimates it could be anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 worth of damage from this graffiti. And a lot of that is because while the graffiti hit all over, they spray painted bleachers, they spray painted cement underneath the grandstands at Frontier Park. They also spray painted the front of a lot of buildings in Old Frontier Town, which is a problem because you spray paint on that natural wood, it doesn't come out and you have to replace it to actually fix that stuff.
During the off-season, the Cheyenne Frontier Days facilities have been a favorite for locals who stop by on bike rides or walking their dogs, despite no trespassing signs throughout the grounds. Until now, officials have been lax about enforcing that, but not anymore. Hersig said the abuse of a few people have ruined that for everyone.
Yeah, it's why we can't have nice things. Way to go, kids. I hope they can ID these kids. I mean, nothing's going to happen to them, though. You know, nobody's punished anymore. And I don't even care if I sound OG at this point and I sound like Wally Beaver's dad or what. These kids today, seriously, if you got nothing better to do, we can find something for you to do. If you're goofing around, spray painting up Cheyenne Frontier Days, we can put you to work. I can think of a lot of things you could do. Be a little more productive anyway. Yeah, that's unfortunate, that story of Cheyenne Frontier Days. Greg Johnson has it all for you, and that's in the Cowboy State Daily. And one thing Greg talked about with us earlier in implications, beside the public now being shut out of the property for reals, is getting insurance, liability insurance. And it was already hugely expensive and difficult. And it doesn't get any easier when you have claims like this made. If Cheyenne Frontier Days, to cover this $20,000 in mitigation for this vandalism, if they file a claim in order to cover that, that's going to drive your insurance rate up and may even get you dropped by your insurance provider, of whom the last time Cheyenne Frontier Days went to get insurance, apparently they could only find one outfit that would insure the property. So, yeah, it's a lot bigger than just having a little bit of fun, kids. Way to go. And ruin things for everybody. Don Day is, what did he say? Let me check this Don Day excuse. He's got a note from his doctor, a note from his mom. Jake in Milwaukee, not going to be on today. We'll be back Monday. Sorry for the late notice. What is Don Day doing in Milwaukee? And what kind of weather is happening in Milwaukee that would cause Wyoming's finest meteorologist to be taken away from his gig? Milwaukee. Andrew Rossi is going to be joining us in just a little bit. At least he's scheduled. And we're going to go from Milwaukee to Cleveland. Because even though Andrew downplays it and probably doesn't want anyone to know, he is originally from Cleveland, Ohio, I think. There's Andrew Rossi, not to be confused with the filmmaker Andrew Rossi. This is a more famous Andrew. You are really from Cleveland, Andrew?
Born and raised.
Wow. Cleveland.
Yep, the mistake on the lake.
Is that what they say?
It got popular when I was in high school or so that's just my default for it. But I get to say that because I'm from Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it's like now, but there was a time 20, 30, 40 years ago. I remember Yakov Smirnoff, the famous Russian comedian, who talked about how he was able to finally get out of Russia because it was so depressing at the time. And, it was Russia. And he came to America, and the first place he landed was Cleveland, Ohio. And he got off the plane and said, made me feel like home, like I never left.
If you ever get a chance, Jake, YouTube the Cleveland tourism videos. They came out over a decade ago, but they're made by a local comedian. They're very tongue-in-cheek, but they are hilarious. It's funny. We were all over that in high school.
I gotta
when those
check
came
that
out. They
out.
were the funniest things.
I mean, it's mostly the weather. And like Buffalo, New York, you're influenced by the Great Lakes and the lake effect weather. And Cleveland's always gray. But, yeah, other than that, I see. But you made your exit. You finally landed in a great place. And you're in Wyoming, thankfully. Your story, let's see. What story was I going to get to first? You remind me, and then I'll try. Oh, I know. The Powell man. No, that's not you. Sorry. Or though
it could be a Powell man, but I'm a Cody man at the moment.
Yeah, just down the road. What is the story I wanted to talk to you about? We talked about the mattress deal in Rock Springs. You are not following this, and hopefully you don't live anywhere near this dude that's got a bunch of firearms and explosives in his place.
No, I'm a couple miles away, and as soon as I got word that was going on, I went out to the scene, but there was literally nothing to see, so.
Yeah, well, Greg, and we got CSD, Cowboy State Daily staff on that, trying to get more answers out of an ongoing police investigation. If we have to, we'll send Claire down there or up there. And that'll be.
I tell people all the time is if I'm calling you from Cowboy State Daily, that should be a relief, because if Claire's calling you, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. You'll want to talk to me. If you have to call, you're the good cop. If we have to call the bad cop in, you're not going to like that. Swinging bridge. That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
It doesn't swing, but it is open 9 months ahead of schedule.
I am anything that comes in ahead of schedule by state agencies, but is a surprise. But I saw those guys, that's right on my route as I go to town, if I go to town, and I've seen them out there working in all weather, all times of day and night, and they were after it. So it's not a surprise that it opened early. They really got after this job. It doesn't look like the old swinging bridge, though.
Nope. The old structure, it was repurposed from a bridge that was crossing the Wilson River when they installed it, and I believe 1936 is when they put that bridge up. So it had outlived its lifetime by a significant margin, and it was one lane. It was covered with wooden timbers as opposed to asphalt and concrete. So the time had just come for it to be replaced, especially since there's more development on the opposite side of the Snake River where it had to get to. So as far as I know, those trusses are still, they weren't dismantled. They exist somewhere, but it's going to be up to Teton County to decide what and if they want to use them for anything. But they got those removed. They've got the concrete pillars that were supporting them. They either have been removed or they're going to be. And then they've got a much more structurally sound bridge there now to accommodate the flow of traffic that's increased over the last several decades.
Yeah, there are people that live over that way that you can only access over this bridge. Although there was a workaround, you could get Old Henry's Road from further south, but it was a pain in the butt. This bridge is going to make life easier for a lot of people. Here's the old bridge getting carted out as we share the photo from this story. And yeah, that old bridge was cool looking. But the new bridge is not so cool looking. It's just this flat bridge, but functional. And Andrew, you wouldn't know probably to ask, but if I was doing this story, I would have asked if they've ruined the fishing underneath the bridge. The bridge used to be that river water under the bridge was shaded, obviously, and the trout just loved to hang out. The fishing was great under that bridge. I hope it remains so.
Well, in a sense, the fishing might be better because the new swinging bridge has a pedestrian pathway across it. So you might have a better spot to take advantage of that shaded area. So obviously it wouldn't be maybe as tall of a shadow because you don't have the trusses, but if you catch it at the right time of day, there still might be enough shade that the fishing will be as good. But I would not be the person to ask. And you're right. I wouldn't think to ask that because I don't go fishing. So it's not the sort of thing I think about.
Also, there used to be, and I don't, YDOT's under no obligation to make sure the fishing remains good under the bridges it replaces. I'm sure it's the last thing on their punch list. But what should be on the punch list is putting the rope back. There was a swing rope that came out of the bottom of that bridge, and you could swing out from the bank and let go and fly into the Snake River. Yeah, so they better replace that old swing rope.
Oh, I did not know. I guess that would give the swinging bridge moniker a bit more of a lifespan.
That's right. That's the swinging we used to do off that bridge back in the day. And that rope was there every time I went. So hopefully we'll get a new rope installed. I don't know if YDOT's going to pay for that.
Well, it's a mixed bag with that one. YDOT covered 90% of the cost for that bridge through a fund that they have specifically to do this kind of work on roads that might be neglected by federal funds. And then the county paid the remaining 10%, but the county will be responsible for maintaining it and doing any repairs and whatnot going forward. So I guess if for swinging rope, that would be a county thing, not a YDOT thing.
Yeah. All right. Teton County has to get on that. I'll petition the commissioners and make sure we get a rope reinstalled. But
I'll be your first signature. I think that's a fun piece of cultural heritage to preserve.
Yeah, it was it was a long-standing tradition as long as the bridge. I told Greg the other day about the history. This bridge, before it existed, way back when. If you lived in the Jackson area, everybody's growing up in the town of Jackson way back in the day, to access anything west of Snake River required you crossing this bridge. And without the bridge, that land, which was heavily farmed for hay, for alfalfa and grass, that was considered an island because it was hard to get to. It was in a sense an island, so it was called Hog Island because I guess there were wild hogs on it, or somebody was running hogs. But if you old timers refer to the land west of this bridge as Hog Island, and anyone else would be like, "What? It's no island." But until the bridge, it was pretty much an island. To be able you had to swim the snake to get to it, or go around or something.
It's funny how each community has those little naming quirks. Like, bring it full circle. When I was growing up in Cleveland, the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians, played at Jacobs Field when it opened in 1994. And the Cleveland Cavaliers played at Gund Arena because they're both named after their respective benefactors who helped fund that. And they've since changed names, some cases multiple times, but you still ask people, where are you going for the game? They'll still say, we're going to the Jake, or we're going to the Gund. And Clevelanders intrinsically know what that means, but everyone else, it's saying like, what are you talking about?
I kind of like that, especially when the corporate thing takes over and a corporate will buy the stadium and insist it's named after them for a 3-year deal. And it keeps changing. And I like when people just refer to the old way. They're not going to keep up with whatever newfangled arrangement has been made. The Cleveland Cavs are on a little bit of a tear to start the season. You still following your old teams or no?
Follows kind of a liberal term. I'm a Cleveland fan, tried and true, but I also like to keep my heart from breaking constantly and getting too frustrated. So I guess I'd say keep tabs on everybody because, there's the pride before the fall is just a constant thing.
We're talking.
I'll tell you this much, though, Jake. One of the weirdest experiences was in 2016. I was in Chicago for a conference. I think I was the only Cleveland fan in the entire city during that World Series because everybody was rooting for the Cubs. So I went to a bar after I finished my presentations and sessions for the day, and I was watching the game. And anytime the Cubs would, get a base, everyone would lose their minds and cheer. And then the Guardians, that's when they were ahead in the series, they get a home run and then there'd be like booing and, just people disengaging. And I'd be just kind of silently cheering as I watched.
How small you must have been in that bar. Yeah. You don't want to be that guy. We're talking to award-winning, by the way, Andrew Rossi, who's got multiple awards from Wyoming Association of Broadcasters for his work on radio and Best News Talk Show, which qualifies you to take this show over whenever you're ready, Andrew, because getting up early, I'm over it already.
Well, they say taking up the torch, but just with the quality of the show that you've been putting together, Jake, I'll light a match off of your torch and I'll keep that going for as long as necessary until you're back on because you're doing phenomenal.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, please do, though. Be thinking about pinch hitting for a while. Yeah. What are you working on for the weekend? Anything?
Yeah, I've got a couple of interesting things. I visited a raw or pure milk creamery earlier this week, so that should be a really interesting story about Hippie Cow Creamery.
Yeah.
And last night I went to a presentation for a story I've been wanting to cover for a while. I'm going to get up this weekend. It's about actually a personal friend of mine who grew up as an only child until 2017 when she did a 23andMe test. And now she is one of 50 halves that she didn't know she had. And they've become part of her extended family. It's a crazy and really uplifting story.
That's really neat. I can't wait for that one. And the Hippie Cow guys, I can't wait to hear that story and read that story. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Andrew.
Sure thing, Jake. Have a good one.
Appreciate you coming on this morning. That's Cleveland, the pride of Cleveland, Andrew Rossi, Cowboy State Daily. A couple of stories you're going to read from him with that byline, Andrew Rossi, coming up over the weekend. Aaron Turpin, our automotive guy, is going to get in here in just a bit. First, let's Don Day's weather forecast for today.
It'll be another nice November day across the Cowboy State and the region. Not much going on today. Seasonably cool temperatures, partly cloudy skies for high school football, or maybe you're headed to the border war in Fort Collins this evening. The weather too there and back, not going to be a problem. Good weather for football. But we do have a change coming tonight and tomorrow. For you folks in the western counties of the state and the northern counties of the state, you're going to have a chance for developing rain and snow showers this evening and overnight and into the day on Saturday. This is part of a storm system that's splitting into two. But it's going to be enough of a system to make for some small accumulations in those western and northern areas, the western mountains and valleys in particular. The front will make the state a bit cooler and a bit brisk for the weekend, but nothing crazy cool. Most areas Saturday and Sunday will just be in the 40s. Then our attention focuses in on another developing storm over the central and southern Rockies early to mid next week, which will at the very least mean some colder temperatures and wind and maybe some snow for parts of the state as well. Something we'll keep an eye on.
This is the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake.
Yes, it is 7:43. Couple of minutes. We'll talk to Aaron Turpin, our automotive guy. Aaron's been in the news lately for Cowboy State Daily, including his latest article, Is the 2024 the last model year for the real Toyota 4Runner? I'm interested in this. My wife drives a 4Runner. From, I think of what year it was. I think it's a 2019. These rigs are super popular because they give you the roominess of an SUV, but they give you the road ruggedness if you want to take these things off-road. like a Jeep. It's a cross between like a Jeep and an SUV. These 4Runners, pretty popular. We'll see what Aaron Turpin has to say about that. And then the story from Mark Hines was interesting about, what kind of evasive action you should take or not when you see a deer in the road. I mean, depending on your abilities, maybe you try to avoid the deer. But in Colorado, law enforcement folks say, for the most part, taking evasive action is the worst course. You're better off that collision with wildlife or with a deer. So, yeah, Aaron Turpin can talk about that because Mark Hines interviewed him for that story. And I think Aaron said, for the most part, cars can take a hit on a deer. They can't take a hit on a moose. And that I can attest to. I hit a moose a couple winters ago, and even with the pickup truck, even with my cattle crusher guard out there, I had the brush grill from the Big Tex. Even with that, both radiators, transmission radiator and the regular radiator, took a whack. But let's start there, Aaron. That's Aaron Turpin. How you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. This story from Mark Hines came out November 13th, a couple of days ago, talked about, what kind of evasive action. I don't know if there's a marked difference between Colorado and Wyoming or Montana and how you want to handle a potential wildlife crash. I mean, it's all individual basis. If you've got time to avoid a deer, obviously that's probably the best course of action. But sometimes avoiding wildlife puts you at risk of other motorists if you get in their lane, if there's people behind you not anticipating what you're doing, and then, you could drive off a cliff trying to not hit a badger. I mean, who knows? Mm-hmm. So your contribution to the story, though, was talking about today's technology, today's vehicles being able to withstand pretty good impacts. Is that the way? Is that a design idea by manufacturers today? Are they anticipating collisions, or it's just the way things are made now?
It's the way the federal law has gone, and then also just the way that the insurance companies have kind of pushed. So you have two crash test bodies. You have the National Highway Traffic Safety Association. That's where you get your 1 to 5 star rating on your window sticker. That's a federal agency. And then you have the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, which is a private nonprofit owned by insurance companies that do crash testing. And they're a little more strict with what they require in their tests. Cars are made, we use what's called a unibody design. So instead of a straight hard frame like you would have in a pickup truck, most cars and most SUVs are using a unibody, which allows it's in thirds. You can think of it in thirds, so that the passenger compartment is separate from the front and the rear, and those front and rear are allowed to collapse in order to save the passenger compartment. And if you hit a large animal, the crumple is what's supposed to happen up front. It's mostly designed for hitting other vehicles and objects, but it works with wildlife the same way. I would say don't speed up.
Yeah.
When you see one.
Okay.
Mark and I were joking a little bit about that because the way he asked me the question sounded like it was a redneck going for a roadkill.
Yeah. Or, if it's a coyote in Wyoming, the black box will tell you that the speed increased in the last 50 yards. Yeah. That could be. I didn't know that about cars. So dividing them in thirds and having the front and back be crumpleable to absorb impact, that makes sense. And it also makes sense why they say, and I've noticed this driving a pickup truck, that it's a stiffer ride. It's not as smooth. Would that be because the car's made into thirds and Because when you ride a pickup, you feel every bump for the most part. It's a stiffer ride because the truck has to do work. It has to haul and.
Right. When you have a body on frame vehicle, that's what that is. That's a solid frame. It's usually a ladder frame is what they call it. It's not as easy to get rid of the vibration coming up or to mitigate it before it gets to the passengers. On a car with a unibody frame, the wheels and axles are usually on those crumple zones rather than attached to the passenger compartment itself. So it's easier to and vibration that comes from the road. But that's exactly why unibody is far more popular. Even when it came out before there were any crash testing, unibody became the standard at automakers because it was so much easier to work with for those sorts of things. It was easier to make the ride comfortable, quiet, and all of that. And then it's also a little more modular. You can do a little more with it in terms of what the body can look like and other things.
That makes
more
sense.
Interior room as well.
Yeah, I'm riding smooth road in the pickup truck, and every bump, gets shocked through the steering wheel. And meanwhile, I'm in, take a ride in my friend's Lexus, and he's going down a country dirt road, and it's smooth. You don't even spill your glass of wine in the Lexus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not fair. But now I know why. Very interesting to know. Let me ask you this, Aaron. We're talking to Aaron Turpin. He's our automotive specialist, Cowboy State Daily. How do I get work as a crash test dummy? What does it pay? I want to.
As far as I know, there is no life insurance or retirement policy for that kind of work. But I don't think they use live humans anymore.
All right, Roger that.
But you can go to like Spirit Halloween and get the outfit. So
how about this? Just ballpark, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but today's you said there's safety standards, there's collision standards. Two different bodies have to oversee that. What is one of the worst rated vehicles for crashes, least able to take a big hit? And what's some of the better, I always hear my sister loves the Volvos because they're made of steel and they're so heavy. What's some of the safer when it comes to a collision, and what's some of the not so safe?
So Volvo is known for safety. That company has been, they invented the 3-point seatbelt, bunch of other things. And they are some of the safest on the road. Probably the worst vehicles to be in as far as safety are body on frame trucks and SUVs. And it's not because they're inherently safe if they hit something. Normally in a wreck, they're probably going to do more damage to the other vehicle. It's because they have much higher risk of rollover. And rollover is the most likely way for somebody in the passenger in the cabin or the driver to get killed. Rollovers are the worst. And most of those heavy vehicles, they don't have a good rollover rating because not only are they top heavy, so they roll easily because they're higher off the ground.
Yeah.
But also they weigh more, so they tend to crush when they do that. So you end up with a worse rating. I think that we were talking originally, this was about animals on the highway. And one of the reasons that the CHP, I believe it was, the Colorado Patrol, was telling people not to swerve to miss Bambi was rollover risk. Once you leave the roadway, it doesn't matter what vehicle you're in, you totally change the dynamics, and the physics are much more likely to make you flip the car. And once you flip the car, you are much more like, I don't remember what the numbers are, but it's a big number, much more likely to be injured or die in that wreck.
Yeah.
So trucks and SUVs. You remember way back in the day in the 90s when the Ford Explorer had that reputation for flipping all the time, and it turns out it was because they were underinflating the tires. That's the Explorer is a whole lot better now, but that is an illustration of the risk of rollover in a bigger vehicle.
And also how high profile the vehicle is will factor into damage and what happens in a collision when you're talking about hitting wildlife. If you're in a low riding Subaru Impreza, or if you're in a high, do you want to be high or low, or it just depends on what happens?
It depends a lot on what you're hitting.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, if you hit a moose, kind of all bets are off. The smaller the vehicle and the larger the animal, the more likely it goes up instead of just hitting. So those crumple zones will help, but not nearly as much. So if you're in a small car like a Nissan Venza or Versa, that's what I'm thinking of, a little Versa or a small Subaru like the Crosstrek or something, then yes, you'll have that animal come up over more likely. I told a story to him about when I was living in Utah years and years ago. I had a Toyota Corolla, and I stopped to wait because there was a rancher that his horses had got out, and one of those horses just turned and looked at me and ran right up the car.
That's right, I saw that. And he wasn't shod, so it could have been worse.
Yeah, it didn't scratch things up so much because it was just hooves. But it dented, went right through the windshield with his hoof and dented up the roof and the hoof, the hood and everything else. Yeah.
How did that call go to the insurance company?
I never called it in. The rancher, because he was standing, he was right there on his horse.
Yeah.
It happened, and he just came over and gave me his info and said, "You go get it fixed, and you just send me the bill for it."
He probably said, "That crazy horse, he's been trouble ever since I've owned him." Yeah, if it was going to be any horse, it would be that one that would run right over your car. Yep. All right, I want to change gears now to changing car models. And I'm thinking of you talk about the Toyota 4Runner. My wife has one from 2019, super popular today. Mm-hmm. These 4Runners. I want you to explain more about this story, but it makes me think of kind of the new Bronco, and how whenever you see a new vehicle, a throwback, a retro model being reintroduced, it's never the same as that old one. They'll make it look a little the same, but still people want the old Bronco, the real Bronco, they say. What's going on with the 4Runner? Are they changing it up? What are they doing?
So for the 2025 model year, the 4Runner will be a new generation. So the current generation is about 14 years old. That's a long time in automotive. A generation... So one vehicle generation in automotive is usually about 6 to 8 years, and then you'll have a completely new model. So what Toyota's done is they have a new platform they're building things on. So the new Tacoma is based on it. So if you've seen the current generation Tacoma now, that's one of them. The new Land Cruiser is one of them, and then by proxy, the Lexus GX. Which is also, it's basically a Land Cruiser, is on that new platform. And the new platform means no more V6 engine. It's a Turbo 4. It means it's very likely to be a hybrid option. And it's going to have a different design. It's going to look a little different. Again, look at the Tacoma. It's probably what the new 4Runner will look like. They haven't released a whole ton of information yet, but what's happening is enthusiasts, of course, are like, I've had this same 4Runner for 14 years, and now it's going to totally change, and that's terrible.
Yeah.
But what enthusiasts of certain vehicles don't understand is that automakers don't sell to them. Because if you go to anybody, they're a Nissan Z fan, or they're a a 4Runner fan or whatever, they don't buy new vehicles. So the manufacturers aren't making vehicles for them.
Right.
These are people who they buy the used one. So
Right. And the manufacturers, they're in the business of selling stuff, and they're going to change it up.
So the upside for 4Runner fans here is that there will be a much heavier emphasis on the off-road capability for the truck, for the SUV, because that's who's buying. So you're going to see more of the TRD Pro, and TRD Off-Road probably. You're going to see all of those packages as the emphasis for this model.
Yeah, and my wife went with the TRD, and it's really good off-road. We've had the thing in southern Utah, and it does the individual wheel crawl over rock. Like it's pretty good little Jeep. It's a perfect mix between Jeep and SUV. It's got room, yet it can get off-road without falling apart. Yeah, those 4Runners are pretty cool. You know what we have to talk about? We'll have to have you on next week, because I really do want to talk about where we think the automotive industry is going with hybrids and EVs. I hear all kinds of things like, that's the future, get ready, suck it up, goodbye gas stations. And then I hear failed, good idea, but failed in actual application. So I would love to know our EVs and hybrids for real. We'll talk about that next time. And also, I want to talk about that paint job that I really want to get on my vehicle, but I've only seen it on, I think, Toyotas, in that flat paint that's kind of no color. What is that?
I did a video on that. I call it the wet putty look.
Yes.
So it's kind of a putty plain color.
Yeah.
And then they put a gloss coat over it. And then that creates kind of the wet look for it. Toyota, Ford, and Hyundai, and then their respective off brands. So Hyundai with Genesis, Ford with Lincoln, and so on. They've kind of embraced this look, and now we're seeing more of it going out. It's a trend. So it's a look that is trendy right now.
It's hot now. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a video on Aaron on Autos about this. So that's a really good subject, because it gets a lot of interest, because people do just like you just did. And they're like, what is this?
Yeah.
How do I get it?
Yeah, what is this? I want one of those. And why isn't this done more? And yeah. It's very interesting. All right, so let's schedule another date. Let's talk again in the very near future.
All righty.
All right, awesome. We got a break for news. Aaron, thanks so much for stopping in. Aaron Turpin, our automotive specialist at Cowboy State Daily, getting us all up to date on all things automotive. Time for Wendy Core's top of the hour news now.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming. I'm Wendy Core, bringing you stories from the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom for Friday, November 15th. A dispute over a U.S. Forest Service land exchange involving a remote parcel of land that some call a hunter's paradise in the Laramie Range Mountains was settled until it wasn't. The controversial Britannia land exchange got the final green light from the Forest Service last month, but Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines reports that some adjacent landowners and other interested parties filed a petition in the U.S. District Court for the District of Wyoming to stop the exchange.
The land that's up to be exchanged over or handed over to a private landowner, a lot of people are saying that they really like that as a great, rugged, remote hunting area. So there has been some pushback.
The Forest Service claims the proposed exchange would increase public access on the parcels that the Forest Service would get, as well as access on adjoining federal land. A rash of vandalism at the Cheyenne Frontier Days grounds has caused an estimated $15,000 to $20,000 worth of damage and prompted the organization to close the area to the public. A group of what on surveillance video appeared to be teenagers have targeted Frontier Park and Old West Town with spray paint, tagging them with vulgarities. That's what Frontier Days CEO Tom Hersig told Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson.
They also spray painted the front of a lot of buildings in Old Frontier Town, which is a problem because you spray paint on that natural wood, it doesn't come out, and you have to replace it to actually fix that stuff.
During the off-season, the Cheyenne Frontier Days facilities have been a favorite for locals who stop by on bike rides or walk their dogs, despite no trespassing signs throughout the grounds. Until now, officials have been lax about enforcing that, but not anymore. When Senate President Ogden Driscoll of Devil's Tower and State Representative John Baer of Gillette met on stage at the Wyoming Business Alliance's Governor's Business Forum in Laramie on Thursday, it was a collision of outgoing and incoming visions about what Wyoming's state government should look like. Politics reporter Leo Wolfson attended the forum and reports that while Baer and Driscoll disagreed on many topics, they share a desire to do what they believe is right for Wyoming.
Driscoll is kind of the outgoing vision in some ways. He will be coming to the end of his term as Senate President here very shortly, while Baer is going to be the likely next chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, which is the perennial committee in the legislature tasked with creating the budget each year.
Governor Mark Gordon also unveiled his $692 million supplemental budget Thursday during the forum. It will be up to the legislature to decide how much of this budget it wants to approve. I'll be back with more news right after this.
Do you know it's illegal to dig or excavate without knowing what's below? This is Jan Warren, Executive Director for One Call of Wyoming. We will be hosting workshops around the state to educate homeowners, realtors, landscapers, underground facility owners, and excavators on the state law, industry best practices when it comes to planting a tree, building a fence, or any other excavation project you have planned. Join us for a free breakfast, get your questions answered, and learn how One Call of Wyoming is here to help. Go to onecallofwyoming.com and register today.
Engineers say there's no choice but to breach the failing 115-year-old LaPrelle Dam near Douglas. But farmers who rely on the dam for irrigation and runoff control say that leaves them with no good options. Breaching the dam could leave downstream landowners wide open to catastrophic spring runoff, according to Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines.
There's a lot of people downstream from that rely on that for agricultural irrigation and other water uses. And of course, they're not particularly thrilled to see that dam go because that puts them in a really tough position. Not only for the fact that they could be losing their irrigation water for up to 5 years, but also because that dam is really important to controlling spring runoff and the floods that they can get from that.
The 130-foot-high dam was built in 1909 and was originally intended to have a 50-year lifespan. And in its 57th consecutive year, the 116th border war matchup between Wyoming and CSU will be played at 6 p.m. Friday in Fort Collins. More than 32,000 fans are expected to attend this year, many of whom will make the drive south to Fort Collins along U.S. Highway 287, which has earned the nickname Highway of Death due to the history of fatal crashes along that stretch of highway, according to Cowboy State Daily's Justin George.
There have just been a lot of fatal crashes there. During the game, before the game, after the game, state patrols from both Colorado and Wyoming and law enforcement partners are going to be heavily patrolling that.
In 2001, 8 cross-country runners from the University of Wyoming were killed when the car the group was riding in from Fort Collins back to Laramie was struck head-on by a pickup driven by a drunk driver. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the daily newsletter button on cowboystatedaily.com. I'm Wendy Core for Cowboy State Daily.
Is the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake.
Yeah, and we have just learned that law enforcement will be pulling over everyone with a CSU Rams bumper sticker, and they will let pass anyone with a University of Wyoming Cowboys. They're not going to hassle you. Big border war game. Oh, Jared Petrino's with us. Jared, you've been to a few border wars, probably.
I have. I've been to about been on the sideline for about 6 of them and been in the stands for a couple. So
it's big. And we just got news today of the continuation of the border war. Did you see that? That's fantastic news.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Colorado State is going to leave the Mountain West here pretty soon. We got one more scheduled game with them in Laramie next year. And then we all were worried and wondering, does this long-time historic rivalry continue when these teams aren't in the same conference? And it looks like Tom Berman and all the powers that be made it happen. That's smart. Who does work on something like this, Jared? If you want to continue this tradition, like, is that the AD? Is that the school? Who puts that deal together?
Yeah, and I think I would start with the ADs. Kudos to Tom Berman and the AD at CSU for making it a priority. And it's going to get the rivalry extended for 8 years. It's pretty big time. And so hopefully, 8 years can lead to, keep it going and keep it going forever. But yeah, that's a kudos to Tom Berman and the AD, and I'm assuming the presidents of both schools making sure that happened. Gonna be a little bit different dynamic because now with it being a non-conference game, it'll be earlier in the season, so it's going to be within those first 4 games probably. So that'll be a little bit new, but at the same time, I think our fans will take that over not having the game at all. So
yeah, I'll accept that, and even though it'll be early in the season, it'll be a good wake up call. Some schools like to, load the front end of that schedule with some puffball games, teams you can beat pretty easily, and just sort of work your way up to, conference play. Wyoming's traditionally in those first few weeks scheduled a top 20 team very often. We've played, I think we played Texas, Nebraska in the past, depending on how the schedule goes. So there's been some important big games early on, but this one, if it's coming in the first few weeks, this will be a wake-up call because this game's huge. What's the importance to the brown and gold for this game? If you win one game all year, this has to be it. It's one of those kind of games.
Yeah, it's funny. A good story about that is my brother was coaching on Coach Glenn's first staff, first year, and they came off winning a national championship, and they came to Montana and won 4 games. Well, they beat BYU and CSU that year, and fans were just ecstatic about it. And they're like, well, we only won 4 games. He's like, well, you beat BYU and CSU, and CSU is the same, is the same token, no matter, you can throw the records out. I mean, we played this game where they were bad and we were better, and they gave us a game, and one time I know in 2008 they beat us when they were not a very good football team. I'll be honest with you, and just you can throw the records out. It's going to be roll your sleeves up, and tonight should be pretty fun. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's just that game is all that matters. This is going to be a night game tonight, not the usual Saturday afternoon college football. So stay tuned. Sally Ann Shermer is going to join us later, and she does not like the sheep. Beat the sheep, Sally Ann says. And she, I think she's not been down to Fort Collins since the last time she went. When the Rams pulled off that dirty deal, the bounce pass. I have that on video, Jared. 66. Wyoming was just rocking through the schedule. CSU was not that good, but they pulled off a 12-10 upset only because they used this trick play that was just video of that play. And you can decide for yourself, but she left such a bad taste in Sally Ann's mouth. She won't go to Colorado anymore. She's like, nope. I'll wait till they come to Laramie and play. But it's a big, big game. We had Jack Tennant on yesterday, former lineman, who talked about how important this game is. And it starts with, past players. It starts with leadership. I mean, is every player pretty much aware with day one, when you show up as a freshman and you're in the locker room, you're from the beginning, you're made aware of the importance of this game?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's such an important thing. And, I listened to that interview with Jack yesterday, and he talked about how the trophy case in the locker room and how important it had a countdown clock behind it. So you always knew how many days it was till you played CSU. And that's how important it was. I know with the new facility, that's changed a little bit. Now the boot sits in the main entryway of the office, so players walk by it every day. Well, since yesterday or 2 days ago when they did the exchange at the border, that was yesterday. Now that case is empty. So now you're going to walk through that office and you're not going to see it in there. So it's going to be, that's one of those deals is that case sits there right in the front middle of the main office there. And so players walk by it every day when they're going to their meetings or going to meet with coaches or whatever. So that's how important it is. I mean, you just don't have a lot of fanfare, fanfare. There's a lot of rivalry. 66 miles are what divides the two campuses, and it's such a neat rivalry. As far as I was there when allegedly there were some fans that maybe put some pesticide on the old field with WYO down at the old Hughes Stadium, and they had to green it all out, and that was supposed to be a night game on ESPN, and so. But there's not a lot of hard feelings against one another. We, especially this week, you maybe can get along with each other off season, but at the same time, this week there's not a lot of conversations going on between one another. So
yeah, 66 miles is too close when you're talking about this weekend to have your rivals that close. There's been mascots that have been kidnapped, goat napped, sheep napped, all kinds of wild things. This game's huge, though. That trophy case is going to read 0 today, is in 0 hour, no days left. This is it. It's on. The bronze boot is the trophy, of course, for who wins the border war that year. Jack mentioned that Joe Glenn back in the day could sit down and tickle the ivories and pound out a rendition of the Cowboy Joe. Is that true?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So after a home victory or a CSU victory, when we got back in time, we would always go over to Coach Glenn's house, and he had the piano right there. And at some point, you knew he was going to fire it up. Whether he had alumni and friends over, or us coaches would be over there, and it was always a tradition for him to fire up the piano and sing Ragtime Cowboy Joe. And those are some of my favorite memories. During my time coaching there, just at Coach Glenn's house and singing the song and just, yeah. One of my other favorite moments was we played him at home, and I was fortunate enough to be on 2 staffs where we shut him out. One year we beat him 24-0. And my last game coaching at Wyoming was 44-0. That was Jack's actual senior year. But after we beat 24-0, we were walking off the field, and it was just perfect timing of the person playing music. They played, these boots were made for walking. And it was just I'll never forget that feeling of just sitting listening to that song and just knowing we just beat them like we did, and with the metaphor with the bronze boot, and that was a pretty cool feeling. So
Jared, I know I've done the research in the past and explored this, and now I must have had to use those brain cells for something else. Where is the derivation of the bronze boot? Where does that come from?
So you kind of got me a little bit too. Former person in the military. I can't think of his name off the top of my.
I wanted to say it was like a paratrooper or something, or
it was metaphorically it was his boot, and there's I've read about it, but I honestly it spaced me. I couldn't think of it right now, which is not good to say, but at the same time, it just metaphorically it was a person who had ties to both institutions, and I can't remember if he went to school at one, but went through the ROTC program at the other one or something like that. But it was tied to both of it. And then they figured that would be the idea for the traveling trophy, and turned into something bigger than probably what they expected, to be honest with you.
The ROTC programs in both communities factor in heavily, and they're taking part in what they do also in preparation for the game. But yeah, it had something to, and you know what? It's okay to say you don't remember, because that's how long this rivalry's been going on. And that's that shows you the importance of winning that boot, where it doesn't even matter where you ask hockey teams in the Stanley Cup, who's Lord Stanley? I don't know, but we need that trophy in our locker room. That's what I know.
Absolutely.
That's all that matters. So watch out. 287 today, heading to and from the game. Seriously, DOI patrol is going to be out. They don't want anything going wrong here. Don't even think about it. Get yourself a DD. Jared's on the way. He'll pick you up. Are you on the way down to Fort Collins right now?
I'm not. I'm unfortunately not going to make it this weekend. But I'll definitely be tuning in and watching it on TV.
Yeah. Big game. That's Wyoming's version of the Tyson fight, Tyson Jake Paul fight. This is way more important. This should be pay-per-view. This should be on Netflix. Cool. Anything else you wanted to hit today, Jared? I don't want to make it all about UW, but it's a big weekend. What else is going on?
Not much. Just I've got the state championships for football for the high school down in Laramie, so that's a big weekend for local towns that are making the trip down to Laramie. It's always a fun weekend. You got 2 games a day and 3 games tomorrow, so that should be a fun weekend. So excited to see how that turns out for those schools and those communities that are representing those schools that are representing their communities. So
yeah, big games. I mean, we didn't leave the War Memorial empty. It's not going to be the college kids, but it'll be high school in Laradice playing at the War, and huge state title games. Be interested to see if Sheridan continues their run. Be interested in that Star Valley Cody game. Me personally in the 3A. Well, those are the two best teams. I think we got all for sure the two best teams going down there. I don't think there's a debate on any of it. It's just who wants to be the best team by the time we're done with this weekend. That'll be fun.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, it'll be some big games. It'll be. I'm excited to follow those. So
cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Jake. Thank you.
Okay, buddy. That's Jared.
Beat the sheep.
Beat them sheep. Go Pokes. It's Jared Petrino in the biggest weekend for Wyoming Cowboy football for sure. Elsewhere, though, by the way, Wyoming, and I do want to get to this announcement that the Wyoming and Colorado State border war will continue. A new deal announced, a new deal inked and announced by Tom Berman, athletic director, just today. So we'll catch up on that news, and also mention that the basketball team, I believe, plays tomorrow night, Saturday night. Yeah, Cowboys are going to host Utah Tech on Saturday night. But the big news is came out yesterday morning, and I must have missed it somehow. Wyoming Director of Athletics Tom Berman announced yesterday the bronze boot, the trophy played for by Wyoming and CSU, will continue. That tradition, the border war tradition, will continue for at least another 8 years, starting in 2028, running through 2035. The border war will continue, a new deal. And that's major because, as for those of you who don't know, CSU announced its decision to leave the Mountain West Conference. So no longer is this a regularly scheduled game. Wyoming would play CSU, alternating home and on the road from year to year, but it'd be a regularly scheduled game. And that scheduling of these two teams was in jeopardy if when CSU leaves the conference. There'll be one more border war conference game next year that'll be played in Laramie, and after that, CSU is long gone. But Tom Berman announced that a new deal brings the rivalry back to life from 2028 through at least 2035. The schedule is in place, beginning with Fort Collins, a game on the road in 2028 September. So the rivalry will take a little bit of a hiatus, and then it'll be back in earnest. A long-standing rivalry dates back to 1946 as far as the consecutive games. This year marks the 116th overall meeting between these two teams. 79 consecutive seasons these two teams have met. Just hugely important. Tom Berman said the border war is an important game for the state of Wyoming. It's in all our best interest that we play Colorado State in multiple sports every year. I believe this is the best rivalry game in the West, and we look forward to continued battles. Great quote from Tom Berman. UW announcing yesterday that the rivalry game with the CSU Rams will continue beginning in 2028 again. So next year will be 2025, and that game's already scheduled to be played in Laramie, so it'll be 2026 and 2027 where the rivalry, I guess, will be on a little bit of a break. But according to the press release, actually, both teams are currently working on amendments to their schedule that will allow for 2026 and 27 games to be added. That remains to be seen. So that would be nice if we can stuff those games in there to keep the consecutive aspect going. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back, talk to Sally Ann Sherber, and hit a few more stories in the Cowboys State Daily today, right after these words. You're enjoying the morning show with Jake on the Cowboys State Daily. Back in a moment.
Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake continues.
827 Friday, we are back in studio. Cowboy State Daily Show with Jake Salian Shermer will be joining the discussion momentarily to talk about the dastardly bounce pass that she'll never forget. Even after all these years, 1966, Colorado State with a huge upset over Wyoming by using a trick play, an illegal play, a terrible, dastardly play. Sally Ann will recount her memory of that, and I have the video to prove it, so it's not just Sally Ann's word. We have video. The proposed 2,000-acre solar farm just west of Casper gets a go-ahead from the Natrona County Planning Commission on a 3-1 vote. This unique 2,010-acre solar farm will be built mostly on private land, and it is, according to land development regulations and everything else governing land use, it is to have these solar panels. So that wasn't in contention. What is contentious? Ranchers saying they don't want to see a solar farm next door. That's not why we bought them, to be living next to a solar farm. This should be ranch land. said most of the folks that came out to speak at these Planning Commission meeting the other day, Dale Killenbeck has the story. Infinity Global is proposing to build the solar farm just south of U.S. Highway 2026, just east of Natrona Road. It would provide a net benefit to the county of at least $40 million, probably more than that. Project modeling shows the county would receive $1 million in property taxes over the 3-decade span of this solar farm. It's expected to last about 30 years. In that time, the county could receive some $45 million in property taxes. So that's certainly one incentive for the county to okay this project. Estimated 250 construction jobs as this is being built, and probably $379,000 in benefit to the state lodging tax. So there's financial incentive to go ahead with this project. Hi, Sally Ann.
Good morning.
We're talking about this solar farm in Casper. I'm sure you're super excited about it. But we can change gears quick enough. But yeah, I think more and more we're going to see, we already see the wind turbines, and more we're going to see these solar panel farms out there. And, they're not fun to look at. Same thing with the wind turbines, but we all need the energy, right?
That's exactly right.
What are you going to do? We got to talk border war, of course. Big weekend. Yeah. I read your column. From what I understand, Sally, are you telling me you went to that game in 1966 and you haven't been back since to Fort Collins?
One time. We went one time.
Wow.
We went when Dave Christensen was here, and it was a gorgeous, beautiful weather, and we had a chance to be bowl eligible, and so we went down drove down to the game, watched the game, got in our car, and drove back as fast as we possibly could. And it was a good game. The Pokes won and got the team bowl eligible, and that's when they went to the New Mexico Bowl, and that had an overtime win, and it was that was pretty exciting. But so I've been there twice in that many years. 58 years I've been there twice.
Yeah, people say
I'm not looking
that
to go back.
Right. People talk about Fort Collins being this great western, Mountain West community, and you didn't care for it at all.
Man, no. So the one line that I could have added to my column, I always think of things I could have said after the fact. You know how that goes. But anyway, so people go to Fort Collins for great shopping, great dining, and great craft beer. Laramie, and go to the Bent and Rusty, which is the most fabulous gift store in the state of Wyoming, in my opinion, and eat great food at altitude and have beverages right there. I mean, I would much rather spend my money in Laramie than Fort Collins. And I know I'm weird, and I'm very weird, and people think that there's something really mentally wrong with me, but I would much rather spend my money in Laramie than Fort Collins. So there you go.
Sally Ann Sherman mentions that in her latest column. She will not spend a nickel more than she needs to in Colorado. She'd rather spend that money in Wyoming. We're talking this age-old rivalry, 78 right now and counting consecutive meetings dating back to 1946. Wyoming leads that stretch, 46-32, but CSU leads the overall series 59-51-5. So it's very close. These two teams even throughout history. And as we talk to Jack Tennant, as we talk to Jared Petrino, everybody says the same thing. Doesn't matter what you did all year long. This is the game that matters. This is the important one. Does CSU feel the same way, that no matter how their season is going, they've got to beat Wyoming? No,
I don't think so. I mean, I think that they think that they're too cool for us, and maybe they do, but I mean, they know that we hate them, but I don't think that they hate us necessarily. But they should. I mean, we've won 7 out of the last 8 years. But I think they have their sights set. Well, it's obvious they have their sights set on different stuff. They're bailing and they're, whatever. They can do whatever, let them do whatever they want to do. But, this is an important game. And, will I be thrilled if we end the season 3-9 and win tonight? No, nobody will be thrilled if we end the season 3-9 and win tonight. But if I'd be less thrilled if we end the season 2-10 and don't win tonight. And so it's just, it's a matter of pride. I mean, we do such a great job. We, as in the coaching staff, do such a great job recruiting down there, and we, even though Colorado kids have all those choices of schools right there, and not just the Buffs, but, they could go to UNC, they could go to Colorado School of Mines, they could go, there's a lot of places, the smaller ones. Mesa State's got a great program. They could go to a lot of places in Colorado, but we nip off so many great Wyoming or Colorado kids to come up here. I want to win it. I always want to win it for the Colorado kids because that's such a big deal to them. And so, we as fans and we as boosters and we as money supporters want the win too, but, and for the pride and all that. And so I can tell people how much I hate them for a whole nother year and all that. But really, I want the win for the Colorado kids on our team because we have so many great Colorado kids on our team. So, and, the last time we lost was that debacle, that COVID debacle when Larimer County said you can play the game, but nobody can be in the stands. And that was the worst thing. It was like watching some kind of, I don't even know how to describe it, some kind of diaspora thing. It was just terrible. So here's the game on a night, a really cold night, and there's two teams and two sides other in the stadium, not a soul. And it just looked weird. It felt weird. It was off. It was a really weird night, and we lost. But other than that, these kids have won in 21, 22, and 23. And so they've got a string of 3 consecutive wins going, a lot of them, and they want to get one more tonight. And, and it really is throw the records out the window. Honestly, it's not about what we did last week, or last month. It's about how well prepared we are for tonight. And I will say, having said that, CSU is vastly improved, which makes me sick, but they're, 4-0 in conference play. They've played really, really well. They have a fantastic running back. And I'm telling you, our defense better be buttoned up, or you and I both talk every time about what happens when the defense isn't buttoned up. So it's going to be it will be a big test. It will not be a cakewalk. And the thing that puzzles me is they're calling for a sellout. They're saying it's going to be sold out. And in my life, I've never seen Canvas Stadium sold out, like close. And what you do see is that beautiful image from the TV cameras of all the taillights leaving, like right after halftime, just all the taillights streaming out that road. And so I'm hoping that if it looks full, that you can obviously notice more than just a few scattered in the end zone in brown and gold. And I think it will be. The weather's fantastic. It's a Friday night. I really think that I'm unable to go for a lot of different reasons, but I'm really hoping that the Wyoming faithful show up, and I think they will.
I think they will too. I hope ESPN camera crews get shots of the stadium because Cowboy fans travel well. That's just an hour and a half tops drive down there. We're going to go down on Highway 287. Everybody do it sober. DUI is going to be out there patrolling. Yes. Don't be stupid. That highway's already not fun, and dangerous, and has been marked with tragedy. So, do it smart, and let's get down to those sheep. We were talking about the bronze boot, which has taken up residence in Laramie. It just feels like it belongs there, doesn't it? And
absolutely.
It's the trophy of the border war. And I asked Jared, because I sort of could remember, but I can't. Neither could Jared. Why it is the boot? What's the boot signify? Do you know the background?
I'm unfortunately not prepared to talk about that, except that I know that it was a CSU National Guard guy who wore the boot. And I don't know his last name is Romero. I do know that. And I do not know that boot came to be the trophy. I do not know that. But I know that of all the trophies in all sports, the Big Ten has a trophy game like every week. Like my nephew played at Iowa, like literally every week. They have bacon statue, and they have some pig, and they have. I mean, literally, they have like the Big Ten has a few. You know, we have the Bridger rifle, which unfortunately we did not get to keep. You know, after the Utah State game, and we have, you know, we have the Paniolo Trophy the years that we get to play Hawaii, which is a big deal because the Hawaiian culture just really reveres cowboys and loves cowboys over there. So that's a big deal. But this is the one that everybody talks about. I mean, you know, you could be anywhere in any conference, you know, and you would, and if you're a college football fan and somebody mentions the bronze boot, you know what it is. So it's the border war, it's the bronze boot, it's our hated rival. I mean, it's everything all wrapped up into one package at 6:00 on CBS Sports Network. It's not on ESPN, so be sure you look on CBS Sports Network if you have to stay home like me. But they have good, you know, they have great nationwide coverage too. So we'll have a lot of people watching and looking in, and you know, Friday night football. You know, college has kind of taken that over, and you know, it's all business and it's all about TV revenue. But I kind of like it because it's kind of almost similar to Monday Night Football in the NFL. You know, there aren't a lot of games on, and you know, usually there's a package of 2 or 3 games on Friday night. But if you don't have high school football in your area, or if high school football is over, you know, then you get a really good viewing audience, I think, on Friday nights. And it's kind of fun to lead into the weekend that way.
Yeah, it's kind of like the only game in town Friday night, so to speak. There's just a short card of what's important. It's going to be huge. Well, if you didn't need, if you needed one more reason to get up for this game, we'll take you back to 1966. And I know Sally.
Do we have to?
At the risk of sending Sally Ann right over the edge, man. October 29th, 1966, the bounce pass heard round the world. This is plain old cheating is what it is. But
yes, absolutely. No question.
I'm going to play.
Especially when the coach bragged about it. After the game.
He said,
how stupid is that?
He said, we've been working on this play and getting it just right. He admitted to it, bragged about it. Sally Ann, hang on. We're going to play the video. You won't be able to see it, but you'll hear the audio from it. This is a little bit of video from that play all the way back in 1966.
To throw the ball backwards at the feet of Larry Jackson, who would catch it on the bounce. However, on the first attempt, Wolf threw the ball too high, right to Jackson, who caught it and tried to make at least a yard or two. Now on 4th down, the Rams tried again. This time, Wolf bounced the ball to Jackson, who caught it on the bounce. Jackson then pretended to be angry, before throwing the ball to a wide-open Tom Pack, who took it in for a touchdown. The Rams would miss the
whole play. It even fooled the camera guy. He didn't have it either. The whole Wyoming team quit on the play. I mean, it's genius, I guess, if you're a CSU fan. But
if you like to cheat, if you have to cheat to win, it's genius. I don't think there's anything genius about it, Jake. And of course, you know, the guy duped the guy's defense that was duped, you know, was my beloved dad, and that makes the whole thing 1,000 million times worse, you know. But anyway, it was awful. I mean, my mom, who knew very little about football because she never had anybody to explain it to her because my dad was always working, so she didn't know very much about football at all. She cried for weeks. I mean, weeks. She just couldn't understand how somebody could cheat and win. I mean, that's just not the way we were raised. I mean, I know it sounds really naive, but it's just not the way we thought things were done, you know? And I mean, people say, why do I mean, come on. We all know that I have basement trolls, and I don't know, he must be sleeping because I haven't heard from him all week. But anyway, I have some basement trolls, and, you know, I just really expected him to come on with, you know, get over it. What, you know, you're a grown up. Stop complaining. It was, you know, 58 years ago. Stop complaining. I'll never get over it. I mean, it's just one of those things that's seared. It's seared in my brain. You know, I mean, great wins are seared in my brain too. Don't get me wrong. And we've had some great wins against CSU as well. But that particular one, people say, why won't you go to Fort Collins? What's wrong with the sheep? It's just, you know, it's a great school. It's a fine school. All of our veterinarians are from CSU, you know, blah, 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 blah. And the list goes on and on and on. And that's the exact one single reason. I mean, it's a single-minded thing. That's the one reason why I cannot even barely say the word CSU. I mean, that's it. So there you go. And then they brag about it afterwards,
Yeah.
and Larry Berleffi, I mean, come on. If Larry Berleffi spelled it out beautifully in his writing, and then that was repeated in my beautiful book, that I use as the Wyoming Cowboy football, which, by the way, I mean, 100 years was quite a while ago. And last time I talked to Kevin McKinney, I said, Steve Weekland thinks you should do another book. And Kevin said, well, I think we should do another book too. So I don't know. It took a lot of work, but anyway, but in that book, which is the Bible reference point of the first 100 years of cowboy football, Berleffi laid it out, and he just said, if it was predetermined and not a fluke, then it was illegal. And then the coach went in the locker room and said, we've been practicing it all week, blah, blah, blah. He bragged about it. So you tell me if that's cheating or not. Of course it's cheating.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was just awful.
The play we're talking about for non-football people is a pass behind the line of scrimmage that intentionally was bounced, hit into the ground, which makes defenders think it's an incomplete pass, but because it's thrown behind the line of scrimmage, it's actually what's considered a lateral, so it would be a real play, but it's just an underhanded way to do things all the way back then. And if that's the way you have to win, and CSU that year, Wyoming was a dominant team that year, and CSU did hold the Cowboys defensively. They played well, and the Cowboys scored just the 10 points. That was good. That was honorable. But the way they ended up winning 12-10 in a big upset was a play that as obviously many have not forgotten even today. Sally Ann Shermer just will never get over it.
I'm here to keep the young ones in line and to teach them the history. Heaven forbid there should be a young one somewhere who doesn't know that history. So that's my purpose in life, is to tell them about the bounce pass.
Yep. The immortal words, go Pokes, beat those sheep, and you can add the third thing. That just isn't right, that play from night. That just isn't fair. 1966. Yep. Ann's already made her decision. Not fair. Not right. Hey, thanks for joining us today, and we know where you're going to be tonight.
Yep. Don't call me, and I'll talk to you Monday morning. Okay? Go Pokes.
You bet. Go Pokes. Beat those sheep. Sally Ann Shermer joins us live on the show every Monday and Friday at 8:30 via the old-fashioned telephone. She'll be watching that game tonight. Big game. Border Wars. Take a quick break. Let's do Western Ag Network's Rodeo Roadshow next.
It's the Rodeo Roadshow on the Western Ag Network. Hi, everybody. I'm Will Rasmussen. Good to have you along. Yesterday, I said the countdown was on to the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo, and that is so true. Yesterday, we did the number 15s in each event. Today, we're going to talk about the cowboys and cowgirls that are headed to the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo in each event. The number 14s on the Roadshow coming up next.
If you are looking for regional or national ag or livestock markets, the weekly Wyoming Livestock Roundup is just what you need. I'm Dennis Sun, publisher of the Wyoming Livestock Roundup. We also have a classified ad section for you to buy, sell, or find ag equipment, livestock, land, or everything you need for the ranch or farm. Please call 1-800-967-1647 to place an ad or receive a free 6-week subscription.
KC Wyoming is the place to be November 21st for Largen & Sons Desert Mart Prime Fuel Sale. 90 coming to and 23 fall yearling bulls sell with over 40 direct sons of Desert Prime, a true cattleman's herd sire. Bred for dependability, explosive athleticism, and incredible outcross potential. This set of bulls will bring power-stacked, proven genetic potential to your herd. Lunch at noon, sale at 1 at the ranch in KC with online bidding through the livestock link. More at largenandsons.com.
In the bareback riding in the number 14 spot, it does my heart good to see the Louisiana crawfish farmer. Yeah, that's right. His family is in the crawdad business down in Louisiana. Taylor Broussard on his way back to the NFR. In the steer wrestling, the 5-time world champion Tyler Waguspak is going back. He was way down. He was hurt about 2 months. He came clawing back that last 6 weeks of the season, finishes in the number 14 spot. In the team roping heading department, Cody Snow of California. In the heeling department, Hunter Cook from Texas. Saddle bronc rider Ben Anderson from Alberta, Canada. Back he goes. In the tie-down roping, a 20-year-old out of Florida by the name of Cole Clemens on his way to his very first Wrangler National Finals rodeo. Cole Clemens, the Florida sensation, 20 years old. My goodness. What were you doing when you were 20? Riley George from California, Oakdale, California, 14th in the breakaway roping. Carly Otero, from this a recent guest on our show, is going back for the 4th time, the first time in 10 years. Carly Otero from Perrin, Texas. And in the bull riding, the veteran Tyler Bingham from Honeyville, Utah, on his way back to the National Finals Rodeo in the bull riding. I'm Will Rasmussen on the Rodeo Roadshow and the Western Ag Network.
This is the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake.
So cool to hear Will Rasmussen count them down. And what we're all talking about is the National Finals Rodeo, NFR, coming up in December. The top 15 cowboys and cowgirls in every rodeo event meet down in Las Vegas to find out who's really who and who's the best. It's going to be exciting. NFR coming up, and so cool to have Will and the Rodeo Roadshow in the forest. Just a reminder of who got in. Top 15 in every event. We're at 14 now. He's going to count them all the way back to number 1. And that's, pretty exciting. Glad to have that segment. Glad to have that segment with our automotive guy. It's always super cool to have Aaron Turpin on. And a shout out to, we had a phone call message that we missed, and one of our listeners, viewers said, loved your segment with the automotive guy. That's Aaron Turpin, by the way, and can't wait to hear your next discussion with him on the future of the automotive sector. We did tease the idea next with where EV is headed. Are we really all going to be driving electric vehicles, battery powered vehicles in the future? Or is this just a well-intentioned pipe dream that isn't coming together? Obviously, the infrastructure doesn't exist really. What comes first, the chicken or the egg, the EV car or the EV charging station? These hybrids are already pretty popular, but is the future really EV? Well, we'll talk to Aaron Turpin and get his idea on it. Keep us posted, this listener says, when you'll talk to him again. I definitely don't want to miss it. Thanks. You have a great show and have been really enjoying it. So thanks for your comment, and we will give you a heads up and when we're going to talk to Aaron Turpin again. Hope we'll have him on the show again and talk about the future, where the automotive industry is headed. Are we headed to EVs? We still going to burn gas and diesel? I don't know. I'm not haven't joined the EV nation yet. I'm still burning diesel at what was $4.60 a gallon at one time, and now down to $3.60 or something like that. But yeah, diesel's not cheap. Finishing up this story from Dale Killingback, by the way, this is the Casper solar farm that's proposed just west of Casper, I believe, on 2,000 acres of private land on this ranch land. E.G. Haystack, that's Global, a subsidiary of E.G. Haystack Solar, is proposing to build solar panels in the Casper area. They'll generate, and these numbers don't mean anything to me. It's the plan is to build a 199 megawatt utility scale solar power generation system, along with 100 megawatts of battery storage on site. Does that mean I guess so. Sounds like impressive numbers. the numbers that I think the county commission, the county planning commission, the Trona County planning commissioners voted to approve so far. The next step is going to be the county commissioners, but the planning commission liked what they saw, and the numbers they were interested in probably was not so much the megawatts, but the dollars. Estimates show that this solar farm could benefit the county to the tune of some $45 million in property taxes over the 30-year life. Construction jobs and lodging tax revenue also in the mix. So it'll be a boost to the economy. The problem is neighboring ranchers don't care to look at it and don't care to know that their fellow neighbors are not ranching cattle, but they're ranching solar panels. That's not what they signed up for. Several neighbors popped in to express their displeasure with the whole idea. The opponents say this could be risk, meaning leakage from these batteries. This will be lithium batteries storing the solar power. Eye pollution, that'll be an eyesore to look at, these solar panels. You also have wildlife impacts. There's been studies done that show wildlife don't care to be around solar panels at all, and this is an area where there are pronghorn and mule deer. By the way, this project does propose to put in 3 different wildlife corridors in addition to the work they're doing on the solar. So there will be the opportunity for wildlife to migrate in and out of the area to mitigate that wildlife impact. There's also a fire hazard. Lithium batteries, we hear, can suddenly combust. I know there was a time where you couldn't even bring them on an airplane. You weren't supposed to bring a lithium battery on an airplane because there was reports they would just blow up. And also some opponents say there's just not enough benefit here to the community to put this project in. One nearby property owner, Robert Kuhn, said, "I'm against this project. I mean, 2,000 acres of ranch land, just keep it ranch," he said at the meeting yesterday of the Planning Commission. Dale Killenbeck went to that meeting. Here's more on it from our own Dale Killenbeck as the core about the solar panels and the solar farm proposed in the Casper area.
A proposed 2,010-acre solar farm and battery storage facility on private ranch land has a green light from the Natrona County Planning Commission. E.G. Haystack Solar, LLC, a subsidiary of Infinity Global, plans to build a 199-megawatt utility-scale solar power generation system along with 100 megawatts of battery storage on site. Cowboy State Daily's Dale Killingbeck reports that at the commission meeting this week, 2 people spoke in favor of the plan while several residents spoke against it.
People that are going to live around the proposed area are concerned about the view. And another big concern that residents had was fire. And there was also environmental concerns. The people that are proposing the project said it's going to be made basically, a lot of it's going to be silica, basically sand. It sounds like glass is the majority of it.
A representative of Infinity Global said the solar farm, which will be located just south of U.S. Highway 2026, would produce a net benefit to the county of at least $40 million over the estimated 30-year life of the project.
Again, just to reiterate, this solar farm is proposed to be on private land. So when making the decision, Planning Commission and eventually county commissioners who will decide the final issue have to take into account what you're allowed to do on your private land. And apparently this is an authorized use of private land according to the LDRs, land development regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So difficult in this case to deny a private property owner the right to do this solar farm when it's okay in all the regulations, so and zoning and whatnot. So, how do you thumbs down? How do you say no to that if that's the case? And then, number 2, it's the hypocritical nature of saying you don't want any wind farms, you don't want any solar farms, you don't want any oil and gas mining, but guaranteed right now at this moment, you're using energy from one of those three sources. It's just the way it is. Juice, man, we're all hooked on the energy, and you got to get it from somewhere. And solar seems a sustainable way to do things. Take advantage of the sun shining in Wyoming, which it does a whole bunch. I love the idea of solar energy, especially when done small scale. Like, I think every new home built, every municipal building built now should have solar panels on the roof, for instance, and be able to generate right there in a real micro local way. The solar panel farms, I'm less a fan of, but, I do acknowledge they're pretty handy. Anyway, that's going to be a continued controversy, I'm sure. We'll keep eyes on it. Cowboy State Daily, Dale Killenback, he'll be on it as we follow its progress through the whole county process. That and many other stories have been what we're following this morning on the Friday edition of the K Daily Morning Show. It's time for Wendy Core's News.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Friday, November 15th. I'm Wendy Core, bringing you headlines from the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom, brought to you by the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. From 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., Monday through Friday, Cowboy State Daily's Jake Nichols takes you deeper into the stories that matter and keeps up with the news, weather, and sports in your part of Wyoming. Just tune in to CowboyStateDaily.com and join the conversation. Engineers say there's no choice but to breach the failing 115-year-old Laprelle Dam near Douglas. But farmers who rely on the dam for irrigation and runoff control say that leaves them with no good options. Breaching the dam could leave downstream landowners wide open to catastrophic spring runoff, according to Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines.
There's a lot of people downstream from that rely on that for agricultural irrigation and other water uses. And of course, they're not particularly thrilled to see that dam go, because that puts them in a really tough position, not only for the fact that they could be losing their irrigation water for up to 5 years, but also because that dam is really important to controlling spring runoff and the floods that they can get from that.
The 130-foot high dam was built in 1909 and was originally intended to have a 50-year lifespan. Usually when there's a feud in politics, a long backstory is involved as to what started it all. Appearing on Cowboy State Daily's morning show at Jake on Thursday, Secretary of State Chuck Gray said his ongoing feud with Governor Mark Gordon isn't personal, but it's about policy. Cowboy State Daily's Leah Wolfson reports that the animosity stems from a bill that Gray proposed while in the Wyoming legislature that garnered one of Gordon's first vetoes while in office.
It all kind of stems back to a veto Gordon made of Gray's bill in 2019 that would have allowed the state to have money dedicated to funding an effort the state of Washington made to not open a coal export terminal that Wyoming was going to use. This would have been really critical for Wyoming to export its coal out of the country. Gordon did make some efforts addressing this, but people like Gray have said that those efforts were too little and too late.
Gray also sparred with Gordon earlier this year on tighter voter residency rules, and on Thursday, Gray criticized Gordon's negotiating skills, saying the governor lacks toughness and timing. A proposed 2,010-acre solar farm and battery storage facility on private ranch land has a green light from the Natrona County Planning Commission. E.G. Haystack Solar, LLC, a subsidiary of Infinity Global, plans to build a 199-megawatt utility-scale solar power generation system along with 100 megawatts of battery storage on site. Cowboy State Daily's Dale Killenback reports that at the commission meeting this week, 2 people spoke in favor of the plan while several residents spoke against it.
People that are going to live around the proposed area are concerned about the view. And another big concern that residents had was fire. And there was also environmental concerns. The people that are proposing the project said it's going to be made basically, a lot of it's going to be silica, basically sand, it sounds like of it.
A representative of Infinity Global said the solar farm, which will be located just south of U.S. Highway 2026, would produce a net benefit to the county of at least $40 million over the estimated 30-year life of the project. Governor Mark Gordon unveiled his $692 million proposed supplemental budget for the 2025 legislative session on Thursday, one of the most important topics the legislature will consider when it convenes in January. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that nearly one-third of the proposed supplemental budget is dedicated to rebuilding resources for fighting wildfires that were depleted this summer.
2024 was a terrible year for wildfires around Wyoming, a historic year. The second and third worst wildfires in state history occurred this year, and the state completely decimated its reserves when it comes to fighting wildfires, $56 million to be exact. Gordon wants to replenish that account and add more to it to help mitigate some of the damage that was caused to some of the land and infrastructure because of these wildfires.
Wyoming suffered one of its worst fire seasons in its history this summer, with wildfire devastating 850,000 acres across the state. The state's two-year budget for fighting fires was exhausted in a matter of months. And now let's take a look at today's weather with Cowboy State Daily meteorologist Don Day.
It'll be another nice November day across the Cowboy State and the region. Not much going on today. Seasonably cool temperatures, partly cloudy skies for high school football, or maybe you're headed to the border war in Fort Collins this evening. The weather too there and back, not going to be a problem. Good weather for football. But we do have a change coming tonight and tomorrow. For you folks in the western counties of the state and the northern counties of the state, you're going to have a chance for developing rain and snow showers this evening and overnight and into the day on Saturday. This is part of a storm system that's splitting into two, but it's going to be enough of a system to make for some small accumulations in those western and northern areas, the western mountains and valleys in particular. The front will make the state a bit cooler and a bit brisk for the weekend, but nothing crazy cool. Most areas Saturday and Sunday will just be in the 40s. Then our attention focuses in on another developing storm over the central and southern Rockies early to mid next week, which will at the very least mean some colder temperatures and wind and maybe some snow for parts of the state as well, something we'll keep an eye on.
You can get Don's full forecast on the Cowboy State Daily website. I'll be back in just 15 seconds with more news.
Open enrollment is here. Discover a range of low-cost plans from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming. Shop now to find the best option for you. Online, in town, in touch. We're right around the corner. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming. What's your plan?
A dispute over a U.S. Forest Service land exchange involving a remote parcel of land that some call a hunter's paradise in the Laramie Range Mountains was settled until it wasn't. The controversial Britannia land exchange got the final green light from the Forest Service last month, but Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines reports that some adjacent landowners and other interested parties filed a petition in the U.S. District Court for the District of Wyoming to stop the exchange.
The Forest Service wants to take, I think, roughly 1,200 acres and exchange it for 3 parcels that add up to 800 acres in a slightly different part of the Laramie Range. That on the surface doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but the land that's up to be exchanged over or handed over to a private landowner, a lot of people are saying that they really like that as a great rugged remote hunting area. So there has been some pushback.
The Forest Service claims the proposed exchange would increase public access on the parcels that the Forest Service would get, as well as access on adjoining federal land. A rash of vandalism at the Cheyenne Frontier Days grounds has caused an estimated $15,000 to $20,000 worth of damage and prompted the organization to close the area to the public. A group of what on surveillance video appear to be teenagers have targeted Frontier Park and Old West Town with spray paint, tagging them with vulgarities. That's what Frontier Days CEO Tom Hersig told Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson.
The CEO of Cheyenne Frontier Days told me he estimates it could be anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 worth of damage from this graffiti. And a lot of that is because while the graffiti hit all over, they spray painted bleachers, they spray painted cement underneath the grandstands at Frontier Park. They also spray painted the front of a lot of buildings in Old Frontier Town, which is a problem. It doesn't come out and you have to replace it to actually fix that stuff.
During the off-season, the Cheyenne Frontier Days facilities have been a favorite for locals who stop by on bike rides or walking their dogs, despite no trespassing signs throughout the grounds. Until now, officials have been lax about enforcing that, but not anymore. Hersig said the abuse of a few people have ruined that for everyone. When Senate President Ogden Driscoll of Devil's Tower and State Representative John Baer of Gillette met on stage at the Wyoming Business Alliance's Governor Business Forum in Laramie on Thursday, it was a collision of outgoing and incoming visions about what Wyoming's state government should look like. Politics reporter Leo Wolfson attended the forum and reports that while Baer and Driscoll disagreed on many topics, they share a desire to do what they believe is right for Wyoming.
Driscoll is kind of the outgoing vision in some ways. He will be coming to the end of his term as Senate President here very shortly, while Baer is going to be the likely next chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, which is the perennial committee in the legislature tasked with creating the budget each year. The two had some differences of opinion about how Wyoming should be spending its money.
Governor Mark Gordon also unveiled his $692 million supplemental budget Thursday during the forum, which he promoted as being both fiscally conservative and serving the public's needs. It will be up to the legislature to decide how much of this budget it wants to approve. And a contentious U.S. Senate race with record spending and an onslaught of negative ads ended last week in Montana during the general election. But the attack ads against lame duck Senator Jon Tester have not stopped. Cowboy State Daily's David Madison reports that tracing where the ads are coming from has taken some work.
Kind of like the villain who won't die in a horror movie, negative campaign ads have returned to Montana airwaves. And when you try to find out who's paying for these ads, it turns into a wild goose chase with very few answers. It appears that this group, Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs, registered in Delaware through a subsidiary of a Dutch multinational company, Wolters Kluwer. And that's where the trail really goes cold. There seems to be no way to reach them.
Whatever the cause, it's not clear when the ads will stop, something many Montanans really want to know. And that's today's news. For a deeper dive into the people and issues that affect Wyoming, check out The Roundup, conversations with the most interesting people in the Cowboy State. A new episode drops tomorrow when I have a conversation with retired Game and Fish Director and Brigadier General Brian Nesvik. You can find the link on our website, on our YouTube channel, and wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you'll find it in our free daily newsletter. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.
Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake continues.
Yeah, we're back, 9/11, and hopefully getting Leo Wolfson into the Zoom room momentarily. He's got a couple of big stories, 2, 3, 4 big stories in today's and yesterday's Cowboy State Daily. Leo's got all things political, which make my eyes glaze over, but politics important. So was avoiding wildlife on the road. Anthony Pilato chimed in during our conversation with Aaron Turpin when we were talking about best course of action when, you know, the course of your vehicle leads you straight into a deer or a moose or an elk or some kind of wildlife on the highway. Anthony Pilato said, yes, swerve, get out of the way. Don't hit whatever it is in your way. And there are times when that is sound advice. That's your instincts anyway, whenever you see a deer in the headlights, right? Is to swerve out the way. Aaron Turpin said in some of today's vehicles that are top heavy and really jacked up, that kind of evasive maneuvering can lead to rollovers, which are the number one cause of injury and death when you talk about collisions. Today's vehicles are equipped with airbags and all kinds of things designed to get you safely through, minor to moderate collisions. But the rollover risk continues to be the worst thing you can do. And rollover is what often happens when you swerve to get out of the way of a deer or something in the road. Jeff O'Leary chimed in on our conversation regarding the supplemental budget. The governor says we got to add some almost $700 million to the budget this session, and a third of that is because of the money spent on wildfires this past season. $56 million spent on fighting wildfires this past year by the state of Wyoming. Replenishing those funds set aside for wildfires is going to cost a pretty penny. Jeff mentions, hey, use the money to clear deadfall and prevent fires instead of fighting fires. he's got a good point. It's higher from happening in the very beginning than it is to try to put it out once you get the wildfire. And that kind of work is done all the time, obviously, by Forest Service and other wildland managers. They're always trying to figure out ways to do controlled burns, to do clearings. I mean, is it done enough? Maybe not, but certainly is on the radar as being a lot more cost effective than actually fighting a fire that's already started. Leo Wolfson's stories that we're following. Leo has been watching the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show. Smart move, Leo. And he saw the other day Chuck Gray was on yesterday, Secretary of State, asked Chuck to go back in history all the way back to when he had his own radio talk show in the Casper area on KVOC. And I even played him a little clip of that show way back when. That was in 2014 that Chuck Gray had his own radio show, and then he parlayed the radio career into a legislature. He was one of the lawmakers down in Cheyenne, and he was the sponsor of a bill that would have done great things to export coal out of Wyoming. And he was kind of disappointed that Governor Gordon vetoed that bill, and that was the beginning of what is this ongoing feud between Gray and Gordon. And in that interview, it was evident that it was nothing personal, and that's the takeaway. That's what Leo Wolfson talked about in his story about Chuck Gray. The headline reading, Chuck Gray says animosity toward Mark Gordon as well. It began with the veto of one of his bills. Obviously, you take that personally as a lawmaker. And then it's continued with what Chuck Gray told us on the show yesterday has been just a disagreement over the way the style of negotiating that Gordon has. He thinks the timing and the strong stance is lacking from the governor. Here's Leo Wolfson, more on that story as he talks to Wendy Core.
Usually when there's a feud in politics, a long backstory is involved as to what started it all. Appearing on Cowboy State Daily's morning show with Jake on Thursday, Secretary of State Chuck Gray said his ongoing feud with Governor Mark Gordon isn't personal, but it's about policy. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that the animosity stems from a bill that Gray proposed while in the Wyoming legislature that garnered one of Gordon's first vetoes while in office.
It all kind of stems back to a veto Gordon made of Gray's bill in 2019 that would have allowed the state to have money dedicated to funding an effort the state of Washington made to not open a coal export terminal that Wyoming was going to use. This would have been really critical for Wyoming to export its coal out of the country. Gordon did make some efforts addressing this, but people like Gray have said that those efforts were too little and too late.
Gray also sparred with Gordon earlier this year on tighter voter residency rules, and on Thursday, Gray criticized Gordon's negotiating skills, saying the governor lacks toughness and timing.
Yeah, and Chuck Gray's accusations that the governor's lack of timing and toughness come into play with the whole Kelly Parcel thing, and we just barely touched on it yesterday, but we're going to have Secretary Gray back on the show to talk more about that because it's a huge issue. It's bigger politically than it is in reality. You know, the 640 acres. What do you do with that land bordering Grand Teton National Park? What's the best use? On a 3-2 vote, close vote, the decision was made to sell that property to the National Park Service, to Grand Teton National Park for $100 million. In reality, the federal money is going to amount to only $68 million. The rest is going to have to be raised through private fundraising efforts, probably locally. In Jackson Hole, to fundraise $32 million is, you can do that in an afternoon. That ain't no big deal. That's chump change. That's walking around money in Teton County. So hopefully the efforts to bridge the gap, the shortage there between what the feds are going to spend on the parcel and what the parcel is going to cost. The federal government says, hey, we'll pay the appraised price, which is $68 million, in a real appraisal where you left it to the open market and potential development from private contractors. The real appraisal would be probably much higher than $68 million. But that's the appraisal they're going with. That's as high as the feds are going to go. And well, I guess we're lucky to get that much out of them. To make the $100 million mark for the sale, the shortage is going to have to be taken up by Grand Teton National Park Foundation. They've been really successful at raising money. They've given indications that they think they can do it and we can get a deal done. So the governor just went ahead and made a move on that. And unfortunately, Megan Degenfelder was one of the 5-person committee members on that panel that didn't like the deal. She thought the state could do better. And Chuck Gray also was a dissenting vote. And I wondered why, whether he was just siding with Megan that the state could do better, whether he was thinking that it was a backdoor deal the governor had made, whether he was just taking an opportunity to do something in opposition of Governor Gordon. I was wondering why the no vote from Chuck, and we barely got into why, but he did indicate he thinks the long play and what could happen here is at issue, and it's the ROD he's talking about, the record of decision. And he believes contracting, making this deal now with the Kelly parcel is going to do nothing but solidify President Joe Biden administration and their record of decision, which, if this goes through and becomes a done deal before Trump takes office, it is going to be very difficult to undo. So this is long-lasting implications that Secretary Gray is worried about. We'll talk to him. Hopefully we get him back on the show next week, and he can explain further why he believes the $100 million sale of the Kelly parcel is the wrong way to go. Not necessarily can do better with a deal with its land, but because he thinks this just opens the door and helps the Biden administration with what could be an important decision if it's finalized before Trump takes office. All real complicated stuff, but something that Leo Wilson is writing about in his latest story. You'll have to read that on the Cowboy State Daily. And Leo got a lot of that info. You're welcome, Leo, from the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. I don't know where Leo is at right now. He obviously tunes in, but maybe not in real time. We were supposed to talk to him at 9:10. He's now 12 minutes late on that appointment. So maybe we'll try to find Leo. Let's take a quick break and come back and see if we can find Leo Wilson. We'll be right back with more.
You are my bread and love, baby. You are my light in the dark. It's time to tell you, oh, baby, it's time. You are my bread and love, baby. You are my light in the dark. It's time to tell you, oh, baby, it's time.
Yeah, let's get back to it. 9:25 on this finally Friday, November 15th, halfway through the month, and getting set next week for Thanksgiving. Is Thanksgiving next week, or is it 2 weeks? I'm going to check that here. Oh, all right. Yeah, Thanksgiving's late this year. It's not until the 28th. Okay. Just wanted to know if I should do, Thanksgiving stories and stuff like that, but we're not going to think about Thanksgiving until 2 weeks from now. By the way, all morning we've been talking about the border war and the bronze boot trophy, which is what the teams are going to be battling for. CSU and Wyoming tonight, football game, big game at Fort Collins, biggest game of the year, huge rivalry. And the bronze boot, we were wondering about the backstory and the significance, why the boot. And every expert that I could think of to talk to today couldn't quite recall. We all had fuzzy memories. So here's the official word out of Wikipedia. Of course, the Googler knows all. 1968, ROTC detachments of the respective schools initiated the bronze boot. The boot, the rivalry's been around for a long, long time. The boot's been around since 1968. It was the actual boot worn in the Vietnam War by Captain Dan Romero, an Adams State College graduate and an Army ROTC instructor at CSU between 1967 and 1969. Each year leading up to the Colorado State-Wyoming game, the game ball is carried in a running shuttle relay by the ROTC detachment of the visiting team. That running relay took place yesterday, I believe, on U.S. Highway 287 between the two schools. The home team's ROTC detachment receives the game ball and returns it to the stadium hosting the game. So that was done yesterday, I believe. And the trophy, by the way, is the actual boot donated by Romero, Captain Romero, bronzed, and that's the trophy the teams are playing for. Even though if you asked anyone involved in the old rivalry, if you asked the players, they may not know the backstory to the boot. They just know they need to win it. We've got to have it here on campus. The boot has come home to Laramie for a few years now, but it's in danger this year because Wyoming, well, the Pokes, not one of the better teams we've had on the gridiron, and CSU Rams, hate to admit it, are playing some pretty good football. It's going to be a tough ask, but everybody we talk to says the same thing. Doesn't matter what the record is going in. These two schools, this game starts clean from the beginning, and all bets are off. Anybody could win it. Tonight, that game is on. We're all going to be tuning in. Leo Wilson's other story that we wanted to grab was this one from a couple of days ago. And I'm going to re-bring it up because I'm just going to add my 2 cents to it. Powell man who sent vulgar email to a state legislator, was elected to city council. Back last week when we had the elections, Powell City Council, the newest member is Troy Bray. That name may sound familiar because Troy Bray back in 2021 received statewide attention for an email he sent to Senator Tara Nethercott, Republican out of Cheyenne. Nethercott was serving as the Park County Republican Party precinct committeeman. Bray was the committeeman. And as the Park County Republican Party committeeman, he fired off an email to Senator Tara Nethercott saying that he was not happy with her role in developing COVID-19 mandates. In particular, Bray criticized Nethercott for her role in defeating a bill that would have prohibited COVID-19 vaccine mandates. So in other words, Bray was against the COVID-19 shots, the vaccine, the whole COVID issue, and it's a touchstone. It is the third rail of politics sometimes, that the COVID thing. And there was a significant number of people that never believed in the vaccine, believed the vaccine was rushed, believed the vaccine could have been dangerous. Some wonder, how was the vaccine ready that fast? I mean, you think about stuff now that to get through the FDA and all that process and years, all of a sudden this COVID vaccine was ready pretty fast. And government, both locally, regionally, statewide, and federally, was saying, get that shot. It's going to be good for you. I remember creepiest ads I can remember seeing was Joe Biden encouraging people to get the shot. I got to try to find that video where he's like, get the shot. And he just said, it was just so creepy. It made me not want to get even if I was inclined to get it, which I'm not. I don't get the flu shot. I don't get any of that stuff. If my body can't fight it off, then it'll be sayonara, Jake. And there'll be the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Andrew. I'm not about the shots. Definitely not going to get the COVID-19 shot. I better put myself in the Jake's Take room. That's just my take on things, of course.
The views and opinions expressed on the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show are solely those of its host and do not necessarily represent those of Cowboy State Daily's reporters, editorial staff, or ownership.
Yeah, I don't know what the Cowboy State Daily newsroom did as far as the shot goes, but I know this guy, Jake, ain't going to get no COVID shot. Not now, not never. And neither was Troy Bray. And Bray fired off an email to Nethercott saying he wasn't too pleased. Now, here's where I draw the line. I might be anti-COVID-19 vaccine mandate, but I'm not writing an email like this. This is crossing the line, in my opinion. Troy Bray became somewhat infamous in 2021 for this email to Nethercott that said, if I were as despicable a person as you, I would kill myself to rid the world of myself. You sicken me. Thank Wyoming are subjected to tyranny once again. FUUC. Ooh. That's where I got to draw the line, Troy. That's over the line. I don't think anybody could agree with that. There's Troy Bray. I don't think anyone would disagree with that, is what I mean to say. And I know President-elect Trump has made it popular for politicians to speak their mind, especially when it's abrasive. Like all of a sudden, that's the cool thing in politics, kind of, to say things like this S-hole country, or, a lot of things that come out of Trump's mouth that have caused some people to wince. But it's worked for him. Obviously, I don't know if that's what's worked. I don't know if having the potty mouth is why we're in a couple of months, or whether it's a lot of other things. But certainly it hasn't hurt him. It hasn't hurt him. We've heard it said over and over from exit polls, from the public poll. Even staunch Republicans have said, every time he opens his mouth, I'm not paraphrasing, every time he opens his mouth, I cringe and I wonder what's going to come out. He doesn't always say things how I think things should be said, but the results speak for themselves. I don't know if that's the consensus with Troy Bray, who is now a new Powell City Council member. But I know that, as badly spoken as President Trump can be, that doesn't make this right in any stretch of the imagination. And it doesn't disqualify you from winning office and running for office and being on the city council. Certainly not. The voters have spoken. Yes. But I don't think you sweep this under the rug, and I don't think you forget about it. This is not how people talk to each other at all. This is, let me get back to my Jake take room. This is just not acceptable in any way. And Wyoming Senate President Don Dockstetter in this story was quoted, and he agreed. Dockstetter said what he said, Troy Bray, what he said was inappropriate. And I will stand by that. My feelings haven't changed. It was inappropriate then, and it's inappropriate now. It's unfortunate it reached the point that he lost civility in the process. I agree with Dockstetter. This is not, it's not acceptable to talk like that, to communicate like that to anyone. Bray has not really downplayed it. He's made apologies. And the quote from Bray is, I am a human being. I have the same problems, same issues as everybody else. I have the same hopes and dreams. Again, that doesn't seem to be addressing the issue directly. And then he finished with this quote from Bray, the people are amazingly forgiving if you're honest. You make a mistake, you admit it, and that's kind of how I am and how I think most people will forgive mistakes. I agree. You make mistakes, the only thing you can do is own them and hope for forgiveness. And for the most part, the American public has missions that make mistakes. And I'm not saying Troy Bray is not worthy of forgiveness, but I'm still, this email is not right and never will be right. If I were as despicable a person as you, I would kill myself. You sicken me. F-U-C. Blank, blank, blank. Yeah, that's just not how people talk to each other. Politics, sports, that's not how people communicate. We got to do better than that. Anyway, that story from Leo Wolfson is in the Cowboy State Daily from a couple of days ago. Let's take I need some weather forecasting. I gotta wash my mouth out, wash my brain out. Let's do Don Day's.
It'll be another nice November day across the Cowboy State and the region. Welcome to Friday. It's November 15th, 2024, your Day Weather Podcast, brought to you by Converse County Tourism. Douglas and Glen Rock, Wyoming are bustling with action this holiday season. Plan your excursion, including fun activities, beautiful downtowns, and historic ConverseCountyTourism.com. As we head into the weekend, we're still looking at that splitting storm, and we still have, I hate to say it, just very low confidence in next week's weather pattern. But first things first, more beautiful sunrise and sunset photos to show you here in a moment. We have the splitting storm this weekend, and that's going about as expected. Confidence is high on how that's going to unfold. We're going to see some snow in the north, some rain on the plains with the southerly split, as I'll show you here in a moment. Our confidence next week remains very low on the exact path of the storm and also the intensity of the storm. Overnight, the models did change. I don't think that they are handling the situation correctly, as I'll show you here in a moment. So as we get into early next week, especially out on the plains, to be prepared for some changing weather conditions. Also, we do have a La Nina update. Where is La Nina? What's it doing? And where is it going? More beautiful photos coming on in from the sunrises and sunsets with that high-level Pacific moisture coming on in. And it just has led to just beautiful opportunities in the mornings and the evenings. And you can see some of that moisture right here on the satellite image. The satellite image and the loop we're showing you here, showing you the next trough coming into the Pacific Northwest. We have strong, moist jet stream winds cutting across the North Pacific, as you can see there. The nation's midsection under a big dome of high pressure at the moment. And all that blue you see out here is cold, moist air coming through the Great Lakes, causing a lot of stratus clouds, a lot of cloudiness there in the Midwest and the Great Lakes, while clear skies out west. But this approaching trough of low pressure is going to change things up a bit. This is where we're going to be by noon today. That trough splitting, getting stretched out and settling in areas of showers across the Pacific Northwest, into the Great Basin, into Northern California. Then tonight and into Saturday morning, it's going to spread to areas along and west of the divide. This is by Sunday morning. So this is by noon today. By Sunday morning, you can see that the split is complete, and that low is going all the way down into northwest Mexico, the other Canadian border. So with the stretching between the two, that will really cause the precipitation that'll be up here with the trough to fade away very, very quickly. But this low will start to draw moisture up into Texas, New Mexico, and as you'll see in a moment, into the plains by late Sunday night into Monday and Tuesday. This is what the forecast for precipitation through Sunday afternoon looks like. This is going to be a swath of snow here. So travelers across Montana, western North Dakota, into eastern areas of Idaho, northwest, you're going to have some snow there. And there's going to be pockets of snow and rain along and east of the Cascades and into the basin. Rain becomes more prominent with that southern low down here. This is mainly developing by Sunday afternoon into Sunday night and cause quite a bit of rain, as I'll show you here in a moment, out into the plains. This is what the snowfall forecast looks like through Sunday afternoon and evening. But with the split, we'll see this evaporate, kind of go away as it heads south and east, while rain is going to spread out across the plains as that low, which by Sunday was here, up into here. Now this is where things get really murky and messy because of what's going on up here. What was looking like was going to happen is there was going to be some high pressure building in between these two low pressure systems. Now they're sort of merging as one, which may or may not be correct, which is going to in turn cause this low to kind of pull everything north track of this low as it digs in. So this is by Monday afternoon. Ahead of this low, though, there's going to be very impressive rain. Look at that. A lot of rain for Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, into central and eastern Nebraska, getting into the western Corn Belt. On the far northwest edge, there is going to be some snowfall with this system, but this is mostly going to be a rain event out into the plains. Precipitation will then come in with the next front coming in to the Pacific Northwest and kind of the same areas that are going to see the moisture this weekend. Now, this is where things get a little bit murky in terms of where the system's going to go. There's been a large north shift in the modeling. I mean, a significant northern shift. Instead of the low being down here, it's now wanting to be up here, which is what actually the GFS was suggesting earlier this week. And then we went and told you the differences between the European and the GFS. The model that doesn't do as well sometimes wins. I'm not saying it's going to win in this situation, but we do have some decent model agreement now. But whether or not the models are agreeing correctly is something we'll just have to figure out. So this is the European model by Wednesday morning. This shows a strong elongated north-south trough that would produce some wintry weather on the back side of it right here for sure. Quite a bit of wind and pulling in some cold Canadian air. And then you're going to see moisture and rain and unsettled weather out ahead of it and colder air pouring in on the back side of the trough. But this would keep most of the weather off the front range and it would keep it out into the plains. The Canadian model looks like this and the GF model looks a lot like the European model. So there's a lot of agreement here. Question is the situation being handled by the models here correctly? And this is where I've got to put a big question mark. Trough of low pressure that's here doesn't really make sense physically in terms of how it would come together. And maybe a little bit more of a rounded feature instead of an elongated one, which would change the structure of this high, which would make this go south again. So this is what we're confident about at the moment. We're going to see the system out here on the northern plains. I think it's going to be off the front range. So the immediate front range areas probably will not get much out of this. But the placement of this storm, which is now north, could end up being further south. Why could it be further south? Well, because of this situation here not being handled correctly and the ridge between the two. The Icon model, with its earlier update, was up here. It updated just before the podcast was recorded here again, and it shifted things back to the south again, back down over Oklahoma and Kansas instead of being over North Dakota. So confidence is low. If you're in the plain states, though, you're likely going to see probably some wintry weather as well. If we took a blend, we call this a national blend of models, and we put them all together, you can see that there is snow forecasted on the backside of this storm, and it will be much colder coming in, and there will also be a lot of wind with this. So what we're showing is that this is the area, like we showed you yesterday, to kind of watch out for, especially if you're a livestock interest, that this area could be hit by some pretty good winter weather, wind, much colder temperatures, and snow, and go back south again as we get into early next week. Now, we will have time on Monday to kind of assess the situation, because most of this is going to be a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday situation out in the nation's midst. So unfortunately, we're going into the weekend with low confidence. Hopefully, we'll have a better idea of how this all will come together later on. I mentioned the wind. There's going to be quite a bit of wind on the back side of this trough of low pressure out into the plains, getting into some front range areas, and that's going to pull in much colder Canadian air as well. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll know more for you. Now, as we go into the La Nina El Nino situation, where are we now? Well, we have La Nina. Here it is right there. You see the blue across the subtropical Pacific. We also have a very warm stretch of water right here relative to the 3-year average. And notice the cold here in the Gulf of Alaska. The reason we've started to see the weather get more stormy is this gradient between the warm here and the colder up here. What we are expecting over time is this cold pool to moderate and actually to see some of this warmer water come up into here. That is the cold signal that will probably unfold later this month into December. But we have La Nina. It's not a terribly robust La Nina, but it's in place. Anything below the 0 mark, if we go back here to August, is you're going to be in a cold Pacific situation. And anything 0.5, minus 0.5 or less Celsius anomaly is going to technically put you in a La Nina. And this is where we are right here. Notice there's been some modest weakening of La Nina. And we did get the new forecast yesterday. And the new forecast is showing the La Nina peaking right here, and the blue bars decrease, and the gray bars, which is what we call a neutral status, it's neither a La Nina or an El Nino. Those gray bars into early winter, into spring, La Nina is going to be gone. And we're going to start trending in the other way with those sea surface temperature anomalies, which is good news, because that would mean a potential for a more wet spring and summer as compared to last year. Something we'll keep an eye on with these monthly updates. Have yourself a good weekend. We'll see you Monday.
Yeah. Busted. This Utah man accused of cashing bad checks, fake checks in Wyoming, some $13,000 worth of checks, says he was just working for this other dude. Okay. I didn't do it. Somebody told me to do it. Well, if somebody told you to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, you know. What does your mom say? If somebody told you to, yeah. This Utah man said he was cashing bad checks. He was cashing stolen or forged checks written on a Alpine gas station, in Alpine Standard Gas. Total, the 3 checks totaled up to about $13,000 before this guy was finally caught. This happened back on mid-September. The man is, what is this dude's name? Just so we can make sure we get him his 15 minutes of fame. Nicholas Boschetti, I believe, is his name. Is that right? Nick Boschetti. Yeah. So here's what Boschetti did. He first was recorded by surveillance camera outside a bank in Afton, Wyoming, Bank of Star Valley, pulled a check out of his pocket, gave it to the teller. Teller cashed his check after checking his ID and handed him $3,418.26. That was on September 19th. According to affidavits, 34-year-old Nicholas Bichetti. His next stop was the Thane branch of Star Valley Bank of Jackson Hole. He hit them up later in the day, cashed a check for $4,281.13. Next up, the Alpine branch of the same bank, where he produced a check for $5,318.42. The teller said, "Hang on, I need to get the manager." So Boschetti was pushing his luck with this check, I guess. He got away with the $3,000. He got away with the $4,000. As soon as he hit the $5,000 mark, that might have triggered some internal security. The bank manager said, "I'm going to need to see some ID." He did a few more security measures, and that was what alerted authorities in the end. Boschetti drained this gas station of more than $10,000 on a single day. Lincoln County Sheriff's Office Deputy Carson Wagstaff would get a call from the bank, and next thing you know, they got Boschetti in custody. First thing Boschetti says is, "Not me. I didn't forge these checks. I wouldn't even know how. This is some other dude that said, 'Would you cash these checks for me?' I was just doing a job." November 4th, Boschetti said sent her to the judge, said he was just a pawn in this check fraud scheme. The letter said, "This is Nicholas Boschetti writing what personally happened," his letter to the judge, where he mentions some mysterious man driving a car that had Florida license plates. He told me all I had to do was cash some checks in my name. Nothing else would come of it. He claims that he was hired by and driven to the banks by a man driving a gray Hyundai with Florida license plates. "I was told the checks were not fraudulent. I didn't create these checks, nor do I know how to. I was used," said Boschetti in his own defense. He said perhaps you could find some surveillance camera of this guy's car and his license plate, etc. He said the driver ditched him at a motel on North Town Street in Utah. He said maybe there's surveillance cameras where you can get this guy's license plate number. Meanwhile, the phone that the guy gave Boschetti to use while he was cashing these bad checks, that phone turned out to be a number. When the police called it to try to call the mysterious man, the supposed mastermind of the check fraud plan, the number turned out to be bogus. Robo-operator answered and said the call could not go through due to the phone's restrictions. Interesting. Boschetti said, "I hope if you get this guy's name, he ends up being perhaps a past employee of Alpine Standard gas station, which is why he would have access to the checkbook." Alpine gas station representative, I believe, said the checkbook is locked up normally. No one would have access to it that wasn't supposed to have access to it. These checks, by the way, were not original checks. It looks as though they've been altered to appear as checks from Alpine Gas. Boschetti faces 6 charges, each punishable by up to 10 years in prison and $10,000 in fines. 3 counts of felony theft, 3 counts of felony forgery. This case is ongoing, but our own Clara McFarland has the story, where the accused said it's not his idea. He was just doing the bidding of some mysterious Florida man. There's Boschetti right there in the inset, who successfully cashed 3 checks totaling over $13,000, but now he's facing big trouble. If it was indeed he who hatched the plan, if it was some other guy, I guess we will hopefully find that out. Other stories we're following in the Cowboy State Daily today. Eggs are getting harder to find in Colorado. Some blame the new state cage-free law that will take effect January 1st, 2025. Others say it's not the cage-free law, it's just the Asian bird flu that's killed off all the egg-laying chickens. Hens, I guess, right? Yeah, it'd be the hens that do that stuff. Many in Colorado have noticed the egg shortage, some blaming a new state law that will take effect soon, requiring all big egg producers to go cage-free by next year, 2025. That may have something to do with it, but everybody interviewed in this story pretty much, Claire McFarlane has the story, said it's probably more likely the whole Asian flu thing. The bird flu went through the country recently, like in the last few months, and required many hens and roosters alike to be slaughtered for fear that the bird flu. One quote from Cyrus Cohen at What a Yolk Egg Farm in Alt, Colorado said, there's probably several factors at work. Cyrus is a small family producer at What a Yolk Egg Farm in Alt, Colorado. And he continued, some farmers had to kill a lot of birds because of the bird flu. There were some eastern state hatcheries that also flooded in the spring. That may have something to do with it. Bill Skebby, executive director of the said that nationally we've lost over 79 million hens because of avian flu. It's time to recover. Egg shortage in Colorado has been noted. Is it the new cage-free law or is it Asian bird flu? Great letter to the editor. Actually, this opinion piece by a non-Cowboy State Daily staff member. This opinion piece from Marta Mossberg says, let's hope Trump scraps the electronic cattle tag rule. Remember, was it earlier this week or last week? I think it was earlier this week. It was recently, anyway, that we talked about this story proposing that there could be changes and more restrictions to the cattle industry. Beef producers could be required to use electronic ear tags that would make them allow government to know exactly how many head of cows you had and where they were going. Marta Mossberg writes, and she expresses, I think, the biggest concern, the biggest fear of these electronic cattle tags. She said, knowing how many cattle ranchers own means the ability to tax cows based on their greenhouse gas emissions. That's something that's been enacted in Denmark that will start in the year 2030, and it could also mean the forced slaughter of cows in the state of Wyoming. Mossberg worries. And she continues, it's a recent move to require electronic ear tags on cattle. It will not increase food safety, but will financially burden small farmers, raise food prices, and may lead to more onerous regulations in years to come. Good sense made by Marta Mossberg. I can't think of too many people that are in agreement that the government needs to know more about your cows. I think the less the government knows, the better for the most part. But maybe these head this off at the pass. We'll have to see how that plays out. Well, we're out of time. 10:01 on this finally Friday. You got a minute of bonus coverage on the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show. Wish you and yours a fantastic, safe, and enjoyable weekend. Go Pokes, beat those sheep, and we'll see you again Monday, 6 a.m. on the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. Good morning. This is the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. The new way Wyoming wakes up.
The views and opinions expressed on the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show are solely those of its host and do